Do you ever wonder how Supreme Court decisions impact our politics? Tune in to the civic engagement podcast, Future Hindsight, for a conversation with host Mila Adamus and guests Adam Cohen, author of Supreme Inequality, to find out just how this highest court has routinely bolstered the political power of conservatives. Listen to Future Hindsight wherever you get your podcasts.
With Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, September 30th, 2020. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Nation justice writer Elie Mystal on Amy Coney Barrett and the future of the Supreme Court. Also on the program today, epic embarrassment of a debate that leaves Joe Biden better off. The undecided voters watched that and called Trump unhinged, but it probably won't affect their vote. Meanwhile, Chuck Schumer forces an ACA vote, which I guess that means you can actually do stuff like that. Democrats to move ahead in the House on a new COVID aid bill. Meanwhile, the White House signals an openness to potential deal. New report, even pre-pandemic, Americans were losing health insurance. Joining the airlines, Disney now to lay off 28,000 employees. Federal court upholds Wisconsin voting extension deadline. Meanwhile, Trump plans a new COVID rally in Green Bay. The governor of New Jersey has signed a budget which raises the millionaire tax, fund pandemic shortfalls, and in Philadelphia, activists win a fight to get 50 city properties turned into community housing. And lastly, a massive snafu in Brooklyn with absentee ballots. Turns out it's an upstate Republican-linked firm that did it. All this and more on today's program. You know, this story about the absentee ballots that were incorrectly addressed to about 100,000 Brooklyn voters. And hopefully they're going to be able to resend these ballots. This is for the November 3rd election. I mean, I think they should have plenty of time. But of course, it's going to make a difference on some level. No bid contract, I think it was $4.5 million, $4.6 million to a company upstate associated with Republicans. But I think many times sheer incompetence is what explains this. The corruption and the malfeasance comes in when it's like, we're just doing this we're giving this contract to buddies of ours, as opposed to the most competent outfit out there. And that's why you see the sort of confluence between no bid contracts and failure. But important thing to note, because We've had plenty of times in the past where we get snafus like this and people perceive it as being ideological as opposed to sort of just typical graft and corruption and incompetence that is bred by that. So, meanwhile, I'm a little tired. I stayed up and watched that debacle last night. I got to be honest with you. It was painful, but what was even more painful was watching any clip of it today. Because it's sort of, the dynamic is sort of like this. If you are in a dumpster for long enough, hanging out, the smell, it doesn't bother, you don't recognize it anymore. But if you step out of the dumpster and you go and you take a shower and then you come back to the dumpster, you realize like, wow, this smells really bad. The polls, the instant polls afterwards basically had Joe Biden winning. The best analysis I heard last night was from my 15-year-old daughter, who texted me right after the debates. And she said, this was the most embarrassing thing ever. Worst thing ever. And then she asked me for 15 minutes more on her screen time app. When I spoke to her after the debate, I think she expressed a sentiment that my guess is that to the extent that there are any voters out there who are watching this, who are undecided, and there's two big qualifiers there, right? I mean, I think there are voters out there who just don't pay attention to this stuff and they haven't made up their minds. They haven't probably even thought about it that much, the election. But for people who are actively engaged enough to want to watch a debate and are undecided, I mean, that's got to be a very narrow margin. I would like to meet people like that. It's hard for me to imagine that there are people out there who are like actively engaged in this election and undecided, but I'm sure they exist. To a certain extent, I think the dynamic for those people is just like, wow, Donald Trump was just super rude. And my daughter expressed some empathy with Joe Biden. She's not a huge Joe Biden fan. She's a young person, but she did feel like he was mean to him. And when he was talking about his son, Trump was mean about it. And I actually think that is probably as close as you can get to a sense of how someone who would be engaged in politics or engaged in the election, I should say, still being undecided. That seems to me to be as much of a cue in which to make your voting decision as anything else at that point. So we shall see. This was, I mean, the other sort of interesting thing to watch is to watch the people on Fox News and all the surrogates try and, I don't know, salvage some of this out of this. And much of the problem that they're having comes around Donald Trump's refusal, or I should say reluctance, to answer the question directly, at first anyways. Will you condemn the white supremacists, the extremists, the militias? That, incidentally, his own Department of Homeland Security says is one of the greatest threats to national security, right? I mean, this isn't just moralizing. This is like a national security issue, according to the national security apparatus. And the funny thing is to watch the Fox and Friends or other Fox hosts attempt to justify this. Listen to how Brian Kilmeade does this. It doesn't even occur to him, like, why can't Trump hit the layup?
And if you're going to say that President Trump was rude, there was only one person who called the other one a clown, a racist, the worst president ever, and told to shut up. And that was Joe Biden on Donald Trump. But Donald Trump blew the biggest layup in the history of debates by saying, not condemning white supremacists, I don't know if he didn't hear it, but he's got to clarify that right away. That's like, are you against evil? Why the president didn't just knock it out of the park, I'm not sure.
Let's ruminate on that. What causes someone to miss a layup like that? Sometimes you get a little bit nervous. Kilmeade's suggesting maybe he didn't hear the question, but why he didn't knock it out of the park, I don't know. I wonder why it would take 4 years to sort of like assess, like, why would that be hard for him to condemn white supremacists and extremists? Why would that be hard? Maybe because he doesn't want to alienate any of his supporters. Well, but let's give Donald Trump the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he didn't hear the question. Let's tune in, shall we?
You have repeatedly criticized.
I have to answer his statement.
No, you have repeatedly. You've been talking back and forth. You made a statement. I'm asking you.
I would love to end it.
Sir.
I would love to end it.
If you want to switch seats, we could
very quickly.
We could do that. But
that part of the exchange that didn't involve Joe Biden is an example of, I think, why, to a certain extent, if there are any undecided voters, they could get turned off from Donald Trump. I mean, it's one thing to attack, the libs or the Democrat or whatever it is, but it's another to sort of, poor Chris Wallace. Why? What did he do? Go ahead.
National Guard, it would be over. There'd be no problem.
Okay.
But they don't want to accept the National Guard.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
are you
I'm
prepared
to
specifically
do it?
Well, go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
Do you want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and
Who would
white
you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud
militia.
Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing.
FBI director
This is a left-wing problem.
White supremacists. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you got to be
not
kidding.
militia. That's what his
FBI.
FBI director
Gentlemen,
said.
Well, then you know what?
No, we're done, sir. We're moving on to the next. We're moving.
When a bat hits you over the head, that's not an idea.
Gosh, jeez. Much funnier version, I think, with Walter Matthau and George Burns. I think it was called The Sunshine Boys. Maybe he didn't hear the question, although it was pretty explicit. Maybe he was just trying to stand down and couldn't find it and was just stand back and stand by or whatever it was. But this is a guy who's reluctant to criticize his. Now, has he come out and clarified this yet? I would imagine he's going to. But if they were serious about it, they would have done it last night. They're just seeing how it plays today. They just don't like the fact that Proud Boys are now, let's put this up. Proud Boys are now marketing out off of this. They're so excited. This is the best thing that ever happened to the Proud Boys. Do we have their merch? We have a picture of their merch. Look at this. Yeah, they've actually integrated it with their logo now. So there's how many have we seen the correction yet? I mean, it's been 15 hours. So I think largely the big story is that Joe Biden managed to make it through the entire debate. And Donald Trump, I think, to a large extent, just made himself look bad. He couldn't help himself. I don't know if he feels like he needs to rally his own base or if he's just incapable of, even for a moment. It started out, right? Didn't you guys think that it started out like he was going to do? I was sort of suggesting, I think at one point yesterday, that he may come out and try and be presidential to try and salvage, sort of do what he did at what they tried to do for him at the RNC, sort of give license to those Republican women voters in the suburbs that, oh, he's not such a bad guy. That seemed to go in the first minute. It seemed to me like that's what he was going for. And then he couldn't maintain it.
It's like, hi, Joe. Good to see you. Oh, we're both at this debate. Like a bit of cordiality out front. Exactly. And then the second it got a little bit conflicted, then Trump lost his discipline. Right. Exactly. It's like, you can imagine all these campaign people looking at each other in that first minute going oh my God, he's doing it. And then it's gone away. Right at the beginning, he just seemed like he was,
Here's what Trump tweeted after the debate. Sort of like a street fighter sort of.
I'm taking out two guys.
Oh, I see. So the argument is he was going against both those guys. But, the problem is that I don't think that his fans necessarily, Chris Wallace has not been, cuddling up to him like everyone else at Fox News. But I just don't think, it's not like he's working for the New York Times. It's not like Chris Wallace is a woman. It's not like he's a woman of color. It's much harder for Trump to demonize Chris Wallace. And that was the other thing that I found really disturbing about the debate. God, so white, so old. And then I'm sitting there covering it. It was like, it's for, relatively old to old white guys. That was my experience of the debate, including myself. Not that anybody, we had people watching it on YouTube, but man, if there was a fast forward to this era, I would hit that button hard. It would be broken right now. It'd be rubbed off. You wouldn't know which button it was, except for the fact that it was the one that all the writing on the button was rubbed off.
Well, obviously, Sam, you have not seen the Adam Sandler classic Click and the consequences of fast forwarding through certain moments of your life.
I did not see that, Brendan. Maybe I should watch that.
Maybe Matthew Film Guy can give us a review for Friday or something.
Today's program is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Counseling. And boy, after that debate, they are giving our audience 10% off. This is for your first month. When you go to betterhelp.com/majority report, you've heard me talk about BetterHelp in the past. It gives you access to your own fully licensed and fully accredited therapist via phone, via chat, video, however you feel most comfortable doing it. As you know, during this era of coronavirus, things can be pretty difficult, and therapists tend, particularly now, because of the way that things are operating, they have long wait lists. It can take weeks sometimes to go see a therapist. It can take months before they can see you. So when you sign up with BetterHelp, here's the difference. They match you with a therapist based on your specific needs, and they match you with them so that you will be communicating with that therapist within 24 hours. Now is a great time to try out. If you've never been to therapy, great time to do it. Obviously, if you've been in therapy in the past, everything is remote these days for the most part. BetterHelp is a great way to do remote therapy. Because once BetterHelp connects you with a therapist, if you don't think it's a good fit, you can switch to a new one at any time. And you can do that for any reason for no additional charge. They have thousands of licensed therapists from all over the country. These therapists have specialties that may not even be available in your area or tough to find. BetterHelp has them. They also tend to be more affordable than therapists that you'd find through traditional means. You don't have to have insurance to use BetterHelp, and they have financial aid options for those who qualify. BetterHelp is giving everyone in our audience 10% off your first month when you go to betterhelp.com/majority report. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/majority report. All right, we're going to take a quick break just for a moment. And
actually, we'll bring Elie on.
Okay, we have him? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the justice correspondent for The Nation magazine, Elie Mystal. Elie, how are you?
I'm, PTSD from last night. Trying to recover.
That's exactly what you just said. Yeah, that was something. I mean, I want to touch on that, but in the context of the Supreme Court, I mean, it's really hard to sort of look at that debate last night and think that if people came away, to the extent that the debates mean change anybody's mind, and that's also sort of a hard thing to contemplate. It certainly wasn't based upon any type of issue set. It was really just like, I don't know. You know what it reminded me of was, that scene in the movie, the classic, like after school special where the sympathetic kid gets beat up by the bully, and the girl that sympathetic kid, has a crush on finally recognizes him and goes over and says, "Let me help you. I'm sorry." And that's the way they start their relationship. I think that's what happened. I think Joe Biden may have picked up a couple of votes in that fashion because Trump was just being out of control. I mean,
if we're going to go to childhood pop culture, I'm reminded of this every Scooby-Doo episode where the villain is finally unmasked, and he's like, "I would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for you crazy black people." I mean, that's look. I
don't remember that.
One of the that maybe it was just what I heard. One of the things that one of the ways I've been trying to explain the debate is that if you did that thing that they do at singers now sometimes where they drop out all the accompaniment and you just hear their raw voice, so you can see how Adele sounds so beautiful with no auto-tune or anything like that. If you dropped out all of the accompaniment, what Donald Trump said clearly was he wants to put Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court so she can hand him the election to the extent that the Proud Boys aren't able to intimidate enough voters on their own. That was the through line through all the insults and interruptions and crazy talk. That was the through line. He started with the acknowledgement that the reason why he wants to put Barrett on the court before the election is so she can hand him the election. He said that clearly, and then he clearly said that he wants white supremacists to engage in voter intimidation. That's the narrative of this debate. He's telling us his plan.
Yeah, and he's done that in the past, right? I mean, he always seems to tell the subtext. And you can imagine his advisors or whoever it is, maybe it's Roger Stone, basically laying it out. This has been my theory for a while, is that the Proud Boys are going to go in, they're going to interfere with the voting and the counting enough so that certain deadlines become either pass or crunched in terms of like certification and getting electors. And then the things start to move to the courts. And that's, sort of some version, essentially what happened in 2000, which of course, Amy Coney Barrett just coincidentally also was, I think, working on that case on some level, not high up, but.
If she gets on the court, Amy Coney Barrett will be the third Supreme Court justice that kind of got their legal start or rose to legal fame through Bush v. Gore. John Roberts, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett all worked for Bush on Bush v. Gore. People need to remember what the actual issue was in the Florida 2000 Bush v. Gore lawsuit. Florida was trying to conduct a recount of its votes, and the Supreme Court stopped the recount in Florida, saying that there was no way to do that constitutionally. So in a situation that we have now in Florida,
specifically because they did not want to create the sense that Bush was not president because that would be prejudicial against him.
Exactly. So instead, so in 2000 we had stop the recount. I think in 2020 the lawsuit is going to be stop the count. Right? We know there are going to be a lot of mail-in ballots. We know they're not all going to be counted on election day night. At that point, Trump and his lawyers will sue for an injunction to make certain states stop counting their mail-in ballots. That will percolate up through the system. And what he's doing is positioning Roberts and Kavanaugh and Barrett, who have all, again, already made this argument, to align with Thomas and Gorsuch, who we know are Thomas and Alito, who we know are like crazy. to force these states to stop counting ballots that have been submitted legally and officially, stop counting them before they are able to tell us the result of the election in their states. That is the plan. That is what they are trying to do. Trump is no longer trying to win the election. People need to understand that, right? Like, if you look at that debate point, that was not the debate performance of a candidate who is down trying to appeal to the broadest swath of voters. That was the debate performance of a candidate who does not care that he is losing the election in terms of votes. It was a debate performance of a candidate who was planning on stealing the election, and thus he does not have to care about losing it.
Yeah, I think he's sort of modeling the behavior that he wants his followers to engage in going forward, which is like, everybody's against us. We're going to fight until we win, period. It doesn't matter what that looks like or how we go about doing that. All right. Well, that also, I think, aptly describes Mitch McConnell's behavior over the course of, I don't know, at least 6, 8 years, 12 years, maybe now. I mean, and it has culminated. I don't know from Mitch McConnell's perspective how you could say anything other than mission accomplished beyond my wildest dreams. Right? I mean, he probably got Trump elected by holding that seat open. He ended up getting 3 seats. Maybe you could argue 2 because Kennedy may have held out for another couple of years and not retired had it been a Democratic president. But 2 to 3 seats. He's got over 200 federal judges, lifetime appointments, breaking records essentially in terms of speed. Let's talk about Amy Coney Barrett. I don't know. You want to start with, is there anything the Democrats can do? Well, let's first talk about her, and then we'll talk about why and what Democrats can do to at least slow the roll.
Yeah. So in terms of her actual record, her record is one of an extreme conservative. We can debate whether or not it's okay to be extreme conservative, but make no mistake that her positions are outside of the mainstream, even of her own party. It's why so often she is in dissent when she is on the Seventh Circuit. Her views on abortion are well documented. She has not had the opportunity to directly rule on an abortion-related case, but she has said that Roe v. Wade, that abortion is always immoral. She has said falsely that Roe v. Wade creates a, quote, framework for abortion on demand. That is patently untrue. Roe v. Wade creates a framework where the state can limit or restrict abortions after fetal liability. She has said that a good Catholic judge should recuse themselves on issues where the Catholic Church's teachings are in kind of direct conflict with secular law. But she said that in the context of death penalty decisions. She has not said that in the context of abortion decisions, which is point and click hypocritical. Right. So
let's stay on this for a moment, because this is sort of fascinating. She wrote this in a law review article. So, I mean, so to be fair, we're talking about, it was, 20, 30 years ago, maybe. She has been a professor at Notre Dame University, or prior to being on the Seventh Circuit, incidentally, on a seat that was blocked.
Already stolen, right?
By like another example, more or less like the Merrick Garland story. It's just that it doesn't get much attention because it's a federal, a seat. And I mean, excuse me, it's a judicial as opposed to the justice, right? And so she wrote in this law review article, and now it's possible that she's evolved in her thinking of this, although I don't know that she's on record in talking about evolving her thinking on this. But the argument she was making is that if you believe in the canon of Catholicism in the way that she does, then it is incumbent upon you to recuse yourself from cases that conflict with this. Now, I don't know, look, from my perspective, one's relationship with your religion is your own business. And if you feel that your relationship with anything causes you to recuse yourself, then you should. But she's out there making almost like a an ethical or a moral or an ideological or a legal argument that there's no reason to think that it would just apply to the death penalty as opposed to abortion. It just so happens that maybe ideologically those Catholics are on the wrong side of the death penalty for her tastes. But that to me, like, in Dianne Feinstein tried to talk about this in her Seventh Circuit, and it blew up in her face because Dianne Feinstein does not have the ability to sort of articulate this.
Yeah, look, Sam, this is an interesting point to me because I can live at that speed. I can accept a judge who says, you know what, I have a moral feeling about this issue or about this law. My moral feeling is in conflict with an impartial application of secular law. And so I am going to step back. I am going to not be a judge in this case. I actually think the system would be better if judges recused themselves more often. Like
and this doesn't have to be religion, right? I mean, I don't believe in the death penalty. I'm a judge, though. The law says the death penalty exists. But I got to say, I don't believe that we should be doing this. I'm against the law, so I need to recuse myself because I cannot be impartial in adjudicating this, whether it's because of my religion or just because, I'm a good person in my mind or something.
One of the reasons why we have multiple judges on appellate courts is not so we can be locked in this endless right-left liberal conservative battle. It is because there are situations where a good, decent judge understands that they cannot rule impartially on every freaking issue under the sun. And so I think we would live in a better world if more judges, quite frankly, followed Amy Coney Barrett's argument in that particular law review article. My problem with Amy Coney Barrett is that argument that she made in her law review article, she applies hypocritically. So if you're gonna say that you should recuse yourself from a death penalty case, if you're basically gonna say that you morally do not think the state should be involved in killing somebody, but you will not stand in front of the state to stop them from killing somebody, then by the same moral teachings, you should recuse yourself on a woman's right to choose, which is clearly allowed under secular law. 50 years of Supreme Court precedent says so. Her moral beliefs on abortion should not matter. And since she has already put herself on the record that they do matter to her, she should recuse herself from issues of women's choice and women's rights. Of course, she won't. Hence the hypocrisy, right? She should recuse herself on Eighth Amendment cases, right? But she won't. Instead, she rules for a robust version of cruel and unusual punishment, right? She does not protect people from cruel and unusual punishment. She thinks that cruel and unusual punishment is basically okay, according to her record. So it is the aspect of Amy Coney Barrett's judicial philosophy that is hypocritical with her faith that I find issues, not the application of her faith in or her seeming willingness to take her faith out of the mix on one specific issue, right? That's fine, but she should do it for all the rest.
And it's not just that it's hypocritical relative to her faith. It's hypocritical in that she has created an ethical, or even you could argue legal principle, because it has to do with the recusal for a judge, and she applies that completely inconsistently.
Exactly.
It's not, I'm perfectly okay with the idea that I'm not as attached to the concept of the death penalty as I am abortion, and that's the way I practice my faith. Yada yada yada, whatever it is. But she's the one who created this standard, which is if you happen to be 100% bought into a certain canon, then you need to step aside. And she's not doing that. So what else? I mean, what else do we know about her as a judge? Because I think the right has been very explicit over the years about Amy Coney Barrett and Roe v. Wade. I mean, I think I could have named, I don't know, well, maybe a couple more, but there's not many, federal judges I can name. Her name has been bandied about for even before she was in the judiciary as the vote to overturn Roe v. Wade, because she was a woman and she is so reliable in that regard. But she's also an incredible right winger when it comes to a bunch of other stuff too.
Yeah, she's an extremist, and this is, I talking to non-lawyers sometimes. I struggle to make this point in a way that slaps, right? That really sticks in their head. The kind of person who is willing to overturn Roe v. Wade. People kind of think that, oh, that's just a moral issue, or a legal, like they just don't agree with one particular Supreme Court ruling. Roe v. Wade is settled precedent. It's 50 years old. It has been upheld multiple times. It has been shaped and molded by other cases like Planned Parenthood v. Casey. To be the kind of judge who thinks that they can just throw out that precedent, that's the kind of person who's willing to throw out a whole bunch of other stuff, right? It's a one-to-one connection. You can't have a person who's willing to ignore precedent on this issue and isn't willing to ignore precedent on a whole bunch of other issues that they just don't like. And so Amy Coney Barrett has a lot of issues that she just doesn't like, and she doesn't think precedent is that important. She has, in fact, written also about how she thinks that basically if the precedent disagrees with your moral compass, you should ignore the precedent, which is a crazy extremist theory for any federal judge to hold. Amy Coney Barrett has written that theory down. And so it comes at you in so many different ways. One of the things that I try to make the point to people is how she thinks about precedent when it comes to Chevron deference. Now, Chevron deference is not a term.
I was actually just going to raise that, but let me. I want to get to the Chevron deference, because this is a huge issue that I don't think that people, we've talked about on this program, but I don't think they fully appreciate. But I want to just put a finer point on that part about you're expressing something that sometimes doesn't stick to people who don't have sort of a legal framework in which to view the law. We're seeing attacks on the sort of the norms in the context of the Senate. But the fact of the matter is that those norms in and of themselves, they change and this and that, and that's sort of part of it. And it's still a political process. The one concept that supposedly anchors the law, because it is the law at the end of the day, and it's supposed to work without having to bring out police officers, on your opinion, because then you're just in brute force, is that the concept of stare decisis, the concept of if law is settled, to overturn that is the most radical, basic, earth-shattering thing you should do. And it should only be done with the greatest care and in the most extreme, it has to be, it's very hard to come up with a justification to do that when you're talking about a law that society has absorbed for 50 years. And so her willingness to overthrow that simply because of a moral consciousness that she has, when it's clear where the society is on this, is completely nuts, right? That's the whole point.
It's such a critical point. We have to remember these judges are unelected. They are unaccountable to the popular will, right? The only reason why we allow them to wield that power, that unelected, unaccountable power, is because we are supposed to be able to trust them to apply the law faithfully. And applying the law faithfully means respecting precedent, right? So if you can talk about abortion, you can talk about the right to privacy, you can talk about birth control, you can talk about a whole host of things. But the thing that a judge is supposed to do is to understand that if we have prior decisions, if we have precedent on an issue, the judge should not change precedent. That's the legislature's responsibility to change precedent, right? That's the constitutional amendment's responsibility to change precedent. You should not change precedent unless it is, as you were pointing out, an egregious kind of application misuse of law that society has long since moved beyond, right? So like when we finally get around to overruling Plessy v. Ferguson and ending segregation, right? Society had that is the level at which you're supposed to be willing to relook and re-examine established precedent. And Amy Coney Barrett is saying straight up she should be able to overturn precedent whenever she feels like it. That's just not a position that normal federal judges take.
And that's why you'll hear folks like Amy Coney Barrett, and I don't know if she's done it specifically, but certainly this is a technique to compare it to Dred Scott, because they want to put it within that pantheon of there have been, we traditionally, for whatever it was, 100, 200 years, treated a certain segment of our population, certain people, as if they were not human in the context of our society. They were commodities. You want to put it on that level and to try and overcome the 50 years of this, but the circumstances are just not there. I mean, it's conceivable, I guess, that in 100 years we would come to sort of like feel that like women are just vessels for procreation because of the nature of what has happened in society. I mean, God help us if that happens, or anything help us. But that's not what's going on here in that instance. And
people need to understand the fight against Roe v. Wade is not a fight against abortion. It's a fight against the legal concept of a right to privacy. When the precedent that she's overturning is the precedent that women have a right to privacy,
autonomy over their body.
So it's not just a question of abortion rights; it goes right to birth control rights, right? Like the first time the right to privacy was recognized by the Supreme Court was not in Roe v. Wade. It was in Griswold v. Connecticut, which is about a woman trying to get birth control. It is something that I don't know that most people can kind of grasp, but the long-term conservative fight here is not against abortion. Abortion is the flag that they want to wave, but what they're really going after in the long term is is birth control. And that is what Amy Coney Barrett is here to do too.
All right. So, but let's now move on to the Chevron doctrine or deference doctrine, which is it's one of those things that is a little bit obscure, but impacts almost every single breath we take, everything that we put into our mouths, every time we travel somewhere, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. So here's my 2-second explanation of Chevron deference. Everybody understands that we have lots of executive agencies, right? The FDA, the EPA, all these agencies running around. All these agencies make rules, right, about what means clean water and whether or not we should have a vaccine and things of that, kind of nature, right? Why do people follow these rules? Because of this legal concept that was first articulated in a case involving the Chevron Oil Corporation. And the issue is that when a federal agency makes a rule, like the EPA, like the FDA, like the FCC, when the federal agency makes a rule, the courts should treat that rule with the force of law. It's why it's called deference, is because when something is a law, the courts are supposed to kind of try to assume that such law is real and constitutional and carries forces and effects, right? When justices talk about overturning Chevron deference, what they are talking about directly is ignoring laws made by the federal agencies and imposing their own will and interpretation of congressional statutes over and above what the federal agencies have said. So FDA says, we can't have a vaccine until certain targets are met. Court says, nah, we're not going to listen to that. EPA says, to have clean water, we need X, Y, and Z. Court says, no, we don't. Like that, the people who want to overturn Chevron deference, that's what they want to do. They want to superimpose a judge's or an appellate court's interpretation of law over the professionals in the executive agencies. That is why, and this is my last point here, that is why every person who even thinks they might care about climate change, whether you're a hardcore Green New Deal person or just a regular old person who has kids and want them to be able to grow up without sprouting gills. If you care at all about environmental regulation, then you deeply care about Chevron deference. Because if you don't have Chevron deference, then you don't have an EPA that is allowed to do anything. That is the one-to-one connection.
And so the idea is that when Congress makes a law, they don't know in the future what chemical somebody might find in the water that it causes neural damage, let's just say, as an example. So they leave it up. They leave a certain amount of it of birth to the EPA to determine, like, it's basically keep the water safe. And the EPA goes out and creates a grid to determine what keeps the water safe. We have this evidence that if you ingest this much of a chemical over the course of a certain time, then the water's not safe. But maybe if you have a little bit less, it is safe. There's no way for the Congress to actually do that every single day. They don't have the expertise. They don't have the time. They can't see into the future. And basically, it's the Chevron deference that allows the EPA to do that. The court doesn't care if they want to stop them from, like, hey, that's going to cost too much for that company to actually dispose of that chemical as opposed to dumping it in the river. Boom, that's it. And there's no, I mean, once the Chevron, like, how, like, there's no, is there even a way for Congress to fix that? Like they can fix it on that specific chemical, but I'm saying, is there a way for the Congress to sort of say, like, you've got to broadly apply that doctrine that you developed in the Chevron case?
It's hard to legislate Chevron deference, right? You could pass some kind of legislation that basically instructs the courts to listen to the executive agencies, but you'd have to kind of do that legislation with each law you pass, right? So you pass the Clean Air Act, and then you have to tack on, and this act will be interpreted according to the strictures of the EPA, blah, blah, blah. So you'd have to do that every time with every law. It is possible to overcome a court who does not respect Chevron deference, but it is super hard. And it means that, and I think in a more immediate sense, it means so many of the laws that we have already on our books become functionally useless, right? Like that's the real kind of immediate term effect. So, like, yeah, you can pass a new Clean Water Act that reinstitutes Chevron deference for clean water, but you have to pass a whole new act, and we had trouble passing the first one, right? So it makes everything once again back into the political arena, and that's just bad for our health and safety. I focus on the EPA because I care about climate change, but I mean, it's as simple as, the Congress passing a law saying, make sure planes don't fall out of the sky, and the the National Transportation Board making rules about how to make sure planes don't fall out of the sky, and then the court coming in and saying, "Oh, Boeing, you don't have to listen to those rules. That was just the Transportation Safety Board. You don't have to listen to them. Congress just said make planes safe. We think that whatever Boeing says makes planes safe makes planes safe." Like that, it goes to so many kind of basic aspects of our safety just running around the country.
And we should just make it clear. What it's going to mean is that how many of those planes have to crash before Congress realizes, like, oh, we've got a problem now, and we have to pass another bill. And if not enough people die, there may not be the political will to do it.
And if we have divided government, if Congress is controlled by one party, but the Senate is controlled by a different party, like passing new legislation takes a long time. We have Chevron deference to make our system efficient. And Coney Barrett is absolutely dead set against Chevron deference. She would join Neil Gorsuch, who is also absolutely dead set against Chevron deference. I think you still have Roberts, but it's part, again. There are long-term goals that the conservatives have with the Supreme Court, and they do not start and they do not end with abortion. Abortion is just the thing that they use when they need to get the crazies activated. They talk about abortion, but there is a whole smorgasbord of things that conservatives want that people like Amy Coney Barrett support.
Lastly, let me ask you this. What can be done now? I mean, is this a fait accompli? Or let me put it this way. It can be both a fait accompli, and there can be things that can be done that can at very least sort of set up a response to it. Does that make sense?
Yes. To me, it absolutely makes sense.
You and I, let people understand what I just said.
Right? Because there is not a lot that can be done to stop Amy Coney Barrett in the immediate term. There's simply too much time left on the clock. There are delaying tactics and stunts. I think the Democrats should use them all. I'm actually disappointed that the Democrats are not more invested in using some stunts right now. There are delaying tactics and stunts that can potentially push her nomination back until after the election. But Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell have already indicated that they are willing to push this justice through a lame duck session of Congress. They're literally willing to have senators, some of whom may have lost their reelection bid, vote to confirm a justice who will sit on the court for 40 years. There is too much time left on the clock between the election and the inauguration to delay it all the way through to January 21st. I just can't get us there with parliamentary politics, right? So if they're committed to doing it in the lame duck, they will get it done in the lame duck. After that, if Joe Biden wins and is allowed to take office, which is a whole different problem, and is allowed to take office on January 20th, then the only thing the Democrats can do is expand the number of justices on the court. I've heard lots of interesting ideas. I know there's a bill in Congress right now about term limits. I love term limits. I think they're constitutional. I'm not on the Supreme Court. And the people who are on the Supreme Court do not think it's constitutional. Democrats think that they might be losing that 5-4. There is right now only one justice on the Supreme Court who has even indicated the possibility that he thinks term limits would be constitutional. That's Stephen Breyer. I think you lose a term limits case 8-1 in front of the Supreme Court right now. If you want term limits, you need to expand the court with justices who think term limits are constitutional. If you want statehood for D.C., you need to expand the court with justices who think that D.C. and Puerto Rico can and should be states. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. There is nothing that you want that survives a court that's stacked 6-3 with Republicans. That's why Republicans stack the court, specifically to be a bulwark against the progressive agenda should they ever lose popular power. That is why they've stacked them. To overcome that, you must meet their game and raise them. You must expand the Supreme Court with your own slate of justices. That is the play. That is the only play.
And the point of gumming up the works right now, at the very least, there may be ancillary benefits to it as well. But the point of doing that now and pushing it into the lame duck is because them confirming a judge in the lame duck session, if these senators have lost and Joe Biden is the president-elect, becomes an even easier jumping board or springboard to court packing, to court expansion and these other reforms. Right. Exactly. I mean, that's bottom line. And so if you don't take the opportunity to gum up the works now, one of the reasons you may not do that is because you want to lessen pressure on you if you are in the leadership and in the majority later from actually making these reforms.
There's also just straight up the issue, we've touched on it already, but there's straight up the issue that delaying Amy Coney Barrett's confirmation until after the election means that that's one less vote to hand Trump the election.
Yep.
So it is absolutely worth it for Democrats to do everything they can to push the nomination until after the election, and I don't see them doing everything they can. I see them resistant to engage in really base and cynical political parliamentarian stunts. I understand that it might seem icky to them, but we are beyond icky. All right, we're in a knife fight to save our democracy. We got to bring everything that we have to bear, and that includes icky political stunts.
They got one job, and that's the job they should be doing. Elie Mystal, Justice Correspondent for The Nation magazine. Always a pleasure. I don't know if that was your kid back there, but we're cash here. It's okay. You don't have to worry about that.
Dude, homeschooling is a whole different.
I know. Thanks so much, Ellie. Appreciate it.
Struggle is real. Thank you so much, Sam. Have a nice one.
You too. That is Elie Mystal, folks. We'll put a link to his stuff at The Nation magazine. Coming back, the Adam Gentleson, he was a former staffer, chief of staff, I should say, for Harry Reid from Nevada. Harry Reid was, he evolved politically over the years. I mean, I'm not going to say this guy was he's not a democratic socialist by any stretch of the mean, but he was very, very protective of Social Security. But he also was exceptionally good at being a leader of the Democrats and getting into fights. He was not afraid to get into fights. He was not afraid to push things in a way, let's say, maybe Chuck Schumer might be. Now, Schumer just kudos to him for forcing a vote on the ACA that's going to put Republicans in a uncomfortable position, specifically as to whether they should tell the DOJ to back off the lawsuit that they're pursuing to destroy the ACA. But what's really important here is to push that pick into the lame duck, because again, we're talking about politics. And the idea of them confirming a justice now, still pretty outrageous based upon what they did in the final term of Obama, or the final year of Obama's presidency with Merrick Garland. But to do so after Donald Trump has lost the presidency, after many of those senators, this is potential, voting on this confirmation will not be senators in a month, makes it even more egregious. And the more egregious, the more costly politically, the seating this justice is, the better for Democrats, because they'll have more opportunity to reform the courts. So Gentleson says every unanimous consent, essentially vote, should be contested. They should never get unanimous consent. There should always be at least one Democratic senator who says no, forcing a vote every time. It will gum up the works in multiple ways. It will deny committees the ability to meet more than 2 hours after the Senate convenes. You also need a quorum of 51 senators to do anything on the Senate floor. Democrats should not show up. Republicans have 53 senators. Make them all stay in D.C. to operate the Senate. It'll make it hard on them to campaign. It'll just make it hard on them, period. They should boycott, according to him, the judiciary hearings. Because if you go in there and you have arguments, it just comes off as a contentious hearing, like a million others these days. If you boycott, the record shows that something was extremely egregious. Those are the things that the Democrats should do. And then they use that as a springboard for this structural reform that we were just talking about with Elie Mystal. We shall see if that happens. In the meantime, we are done here today. For you folks who listen or watch the first hour of the program, we will see you tomorrow. In the meantime, for the rest of us, we will be heading to the fun half. Just a reminder, this program relies on your support. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you support the first half of the show, and then we give you the second half of the show. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. We now have a new carpenter pencils and new shirts. We got a Posit shirt in the merch store at shop.majorityreportradio.com. Also, don't forget the AM Quickie. Great way to keep up on all the happenings and stories that you don't hear other places. amquickie.com, 6 or 7 minutes every morning on your favorite podcast service. Or you can also see it on YouTube, too. We have it at the Majority Report audio YouTube channel. Check out Noma Key's show. She did a debate wrap-up last night. I don't know who she got on for today. Dorsey didn't tell me, but check her out at 3 p.m. Her show's been great as of late. You can find that at youtube.com, The Nomiki Show, or patreon.com, The Nomiki Show. And Jamie, what's happening on the Antifada?
Well, this week on the Antifada, we have a hot, fresh History is a Weapon coming at you. It's very topical. I just discovered what it was about when I looked at it just now, because I'm not in it. It's Sean and Matt Crispin from Chapo Trap House, two really smart guys who know a lot about history. This one is about a little thing called QAnon. So in this two-parter, Matt and Sean examine the political economy and prehistory of everyone's favorite far-right conspiracy movement. How has alienation and economic crisis combined to create a heady and perhaps dangerous mix of religious fervor and crackpot ideology? How does QAnon overlap with conspiracy theories of the past? How does it represent something new and different? The boys do their best to get their heads around it. So part 1 is out now, patreon.com/theintifada. And part 2 is coming out, I believe, for our patrons on Friday. So check it out, folks.
Matt, what happened on TMBS last night?
Last night on TMBS, we had a members-only pregame show where Jean Bajalan joined us to talk about the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict and sort of the global powers at play there. And then we covered the debate live for the full show, and that was super fun and, not at all hard on, sort of your heart rate or anything like that. So you can check that out at the Michael Brooks Show YouTube page and patreon.com/TMBS. And I'll probably be taking to the skies at twitch.tv/literary hangover in the next few days.
All right, folks, quick break. 646-257-3920 is the number. We will see you in the fun half. Are we going to play that the board editor one?
Sure.
Okay, yeah, let's do that one. I just want to see that one again. So good.
In for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back, boys back, and the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you can imagine.
The alpha males are back, boys back, and the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost has what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Dannerky's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Dannerky.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are...
Psych. Fuck them. Almost has what?
What?
Almost has what? Hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
The alpha males are back. And the Africans are black Africans. The alpha males are back. And the Africans are black
think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists. Keep it at 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
Went through that whole thing, Matt,
God.
to get you able to do the unmute, and you didn't use it today.
I tried to, but I need admin powers. Apparently.
Oh my God.
You don't have admin powers? I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can get those. I think it's you're either born with them or you're not.
Ooh,
that's the real class struggle.
There you go.
Well, I'm so tickled by that video.
It's
the first time I've seen it.
Oh, it is?
We watched it yesterday for the first time.
Oh, yeah. No, yesterday I spent about 20 minutes talking about that thing. It's so great. Politica erotica. Having issues calling in today. Okay. So basically, Biden throws the Green New Deal under the bus for political brownie points while saying in plain English that the deal is advantageous enough to pay for itself over time and still opts not to support it. I mean, look, he had already thrown the Green New Deal under the bus. He has a decent, not great version of a Green New Deal, if you will. But I don't know. You can also look at that as like half the argument's already made. It's effective. You're just afraid of doing it politically, at least in the context of an election. But yeah, look, I don't know that there's anyone who could have watched that debate last night and not have thought that literally almost any of the Democratic candidates couldn't have done better on that debate stage. I just don't know that it's possible for anyone to have watched that and come away with the conclusion that I don't know, Amy Klobuchar couldn't have done a better job. I mean, certainly, I think, Bernie, even Warren would have done much better. But the bottom line is anybody would have done better. But that's not who our candidate is. And frankly, that's not even like integral to his plan. I think he still won the debate to the extent that people watched just because they were like, Donald Trump is rude. And here's this nice young man. There's this nice man. And Donald Trump is being rude to everybody. And that's, mission accomplished for them. So I don't know. I mean, I can't. I mean, that's basically it. There's really not even, we got a couple more clips maybe, but there's nothing to analyze there. I mean, there's no like indications of what one person's going to do or another. And I don't really even think that there was huge sort of swings. There was no, politics. There was no, policy discussed really in any meaningful manner. It was, or to the extent that it was, it's certainly nothing that landed. You didn't even have Joe Biden like effectively talk about how you don't pay taxes, and we all know how this goes, right? I mean, Trump addressed this last time. That's because I'm smart. I mean, the lines that you could have deployed as Joe Biden in that debate, anyone who had prepped and had the ability to sort of just like lock these in, load them up, and just deploy them like a robot. You're smart. Yeah. You tell the construction worker that you're smarter than them because they're the suckers who are paying taxes. That's the problem, Mr. President. This whole country is full of suckers. That's the way you perceive them. That's the way you called our military, dead. I mean, like, saying stuff sort of like this sometimes makes me a little nauseous to even like say these things, these platitudes, but they're so obvious that honestly, like a monkey could deploy them. Like you could, I think, given enough time, you could teach a parrot or a parakeet to every time he says this, you say that. And Biden couldn't manage that. There was a couple of moments that he had where he became a little bit more fluid and, I think came off as sort of engaged in some fashion. But ultimately, I think it's my daughter had the most, I think, relevant take, which is like, Trump is just such an a-hole. And
that's literally what I was going to say.
Right. And I think that is like, I think that's probably the thing that most resonated from that debate. I mean, and listen, if you're sitting on a stage with Joe Biden and people perceive you as the a-hole, you got a problem. Right? I mean, it's not like Joe Biden has been considered like, he's such a, Yeah. I mean, remember like some of the things that Joe Biden said on the campaign trail? Like, I don't care, go vote for somebody else. That type of stuff. But Biden, they played that, fairly well. Occasionally he said, shut up to the president, and everybody's like, totally appropriate response. And I mean, there's no doubt in my mind, there's a bunch of like, older people, younger people. I mean, just a whole cross section of people. It's just like, I wish somebody would just tell him to shut up. And Biden did. So I think on the Biden curve, he did well, I mean.
Yeah, I just don't think it's not news anymore that Biden doesn't elaborate left-wing positions. And like, if we're going to get these left-wing policies implemented, it's going to be force and not because Biden, is
absolutely
vocalizing correct.
Absolutely. And I think it's also like, frankly, if you had told me yesterday, like, Biden's not going to be super swift in executing this stuff, I would have been like, yeah, no kidding. And I'm really, honestly, my attitude was just like, as long as he's still, able to smile at the end of the 90 minutes or whatever it is, we'll take it. And that's basically what happened. And I think to the extent that there's a winner from that debate, anybody who got any benefit from it, it may have been him, but just not losing when you are up in the polls anyways, and allowing Donald Trump to sort of display all the reasons why, not all the reasons, but a big subset of the reasons of why, particularly like, mainstream Democrats hate him. Mission accomplished.
Well, Trump, clearly his strategy in this debate was to filibuster and keep anyone else from talking, which he did, and also play to his base, which he did. Like, he came off like a total maniac and an a-hole to anyone who's not already part of his base, but he's not trying to persuade anyone at this point in time, right? Like our guest just said, his strategy to win this election is not getting more people to vote for him. It's voter suppression. It's stopping the ballots from being counted and all that crap. So it's hard to come out of this thinking that anything positive is going to come from it. But, also nothing negative. It was pretty much just a waste of everyone's time.
Let's see. Trump is finally right about one thing. Biden did beat Bernie, but not by much. Biden really doesn't want to be in the same camp as Bernie, but at what cost? Miss Michael's laugh last night. Much love, guys. Totally agree. Thanks for the read. Doctor from New Jersey. Dr. Eric, I missed the first half, and sorry if you already discussed, but Biden last night stated the public option would only be for folks poor enough to qualify for Medicaid. Far cry from his assertions during the primary when he claimed this would be comparable to Medicare for all and anyone could sign up. One thing the fascist Trump has done effectively is force Biden into a box where he either has to disappeal to center righties or alienate the left. I think one of the things that Trump is trying to do, and he tried to do that last night, and he was very explicit about it. He is trying to get the left disaffected enough with Biden that they don't show up for him in the way that they didn't show up. I mean, I'm not even sure I buy this argument that they didn't show up for Clinton. But it certainly helps to have a disaffected left complaining about Biden if you want to suppress the vote. You know, I don't think that there was so many people on the left who didn't vote for Clinton as much as there was enough dissatisfaction that ended up like getting people not to come out to vote in certain instances.
Yeah. Something feels a little bit different this time around, I must say. I think the Bernie people are angrier and tireder of this crap multiplied by 4 years.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Well, and also, if the plan was that we're going to get Trump for 4 years and this is going to bring about the revolution, it didn't work.
Well, that was almost nobody's plan on the left.
I think it was actually many people's plans. I mean, not, there's no doubt in my mind that we heard from them more. And I don't know how you would quantify that, but certainly there were significant number of voices who articulated that plan.
Yeah, it's the same people that are saying, look at what Trump gave us, the squad. It's that line of thinking. They're definitely out there. It's like the Jimmy Dore idiot.
Yeah, I mean,
those people need to come to DSA's Socialist Night School and learn why that is not true.
Right. And you know, people talk about how the DNC doesn't learn. Of course it doesn't learn, because they have their own, you know, sort of like personal agendas and institutional agendas that are paramount to them. That's why they function. You know, like those, but also there's another cohort of people who didn't learn either. And those people who think that another 4 years of Trump, that's what will bring about the revolution. It just doesn't work that way. Or it certainly hasn't worked that way in my lifetime, having lived through Reagan and Bush. It didn't work that way at all.
I know. I believe that some people have said that was a plan, and we've certainly covered it on this show. I don't think they were a substantial block of voters or non-voters. But
how substantial do you need to be when the election is literally 0.05% decided by 0.05% of the people?
Yeah, I don't know. Susan Sarandon and Jimmy Dore aren't that many votes, but
well, they're just 2 votes, but I don't know how many people you think were supportive of them. I mean, let's put it this way. Jimmy Dore puts out that video, right? And he gets 100,000 views on it. Now, maybe 25,000 of them are hate views. So there's 75,000 views. I'm just using Jimmy as an example because you raised them. So there's 75,000 people who are supportive of that position. Now, they're not all in 3 states. Maybe they're distributed across, I don't know, 20 states, right? So maybe there's 4,000 per state in those 20 states. Well, I mean, in Michigan and Wisconsin, 11,000, 20,000. In Pennsylvania, 40,000. I don't know. I'm just saying that it's not an absurd thing to talk about. I would agree that and hope that on the left, broadly speaking, people are a little bit more strategic and thoughtful than these things. And I think that is the case. But nevertheless, and remember too, in 2016, Jimmy Dore was a part of the TYT network. And they have quite a large reach.
Oh, my God.
Winnipeg Craig, Sam, I noticed before the debate when you read my IM, you didn't actually commit to covering the BC or Saskatchewan elections. I'll bet you wish you were covering provincial elections before the debate was over, though. Fun fact, Ryan Miley, the Saskatchewan NDP leader, just proposed a 1% wealth tax on assets of $15 million. That is pretty good. Maybe we'll start a second show. Science, people don't care about your feelings. Hey, Sam, it's my birthday. Can I get, and I got a promotion. Can I get a shofar? Wow, that's well timed. Got the promotion on your birthday. Good for you. Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 256 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Oh, you know what I have to do? I actually have to call in. Why do I keep forgetting to do that now? Ay. So many things. So many things to do. Let's see. Just give me 1 second. I should be there. Haven't I done that? Okay, there we go. Like every single thing now needs to be automated for me.
Hey.
Calling from a 256 area code. Who's this? Yeah, who's this?
Hey, this is Jacob from Alabama.
Jacob from Alabama, what's on your mind?
Yeah, you've been kind of sounding the or sending out the bat signal for some good news the past few weeks. So I thought I'd
really the past few years, but go ahead.
Right. Well, and so what I wanted to talk about was the largest private sector strike in the country in 2020 ended a few weeks back, and that was the Bath Iron Works strike. The Machinist Union Local S6 went on strike for about 8 weeks. 87% of the membership voted to go on strike. It was more than 4,300 workers, and they were striking over issues with seniority. I talked to one member of the local who had been working there for nearly 50 years, and he said that in the new contract, they would have been able to throw him on night shifts and have him paint the wall if they wanted to. And obviously that's not ideal. They were fighting over subcontracting. The company wanted to be able to bring in non-union subcontractors to do work at, lower rates and obviously less quality work. And they talked about the subcontractors that they have now. They're so poor at their jobs that they have to rework a lot of this stuff. So doesn't even make financial sense. It was just a way to, they just wanted to bust the union up. Right. And so they went on strike. They were on strike for 8 weeks, and they were able to retain their retain status quo on seniority and subcontracting language in the contract. And additionally, they were able to secure a 3% annual raise for the duration of the contract, which was not even something that was at the top of their mind. And one of the things that really inspired me was like this older gentleman that I talked to. He talked about how much solidarity there was between the different kind of factions or the different groups of people in these in the union. The thing about the seniority that was obviously that was a ploy to try to separate the younger folks from the older folks and get the younger folks to vote for the contract. And let the older folks kind of hang out to dry, and they didn't do that. And in fact, the younger members of that union were the ones leading the strike. They were one leading demonstrations before the strike vote happened in the shipyard, ringing bells and like laying down hammers and like hundreds of impromptu demonstrations during their lunch breaks.
So Jacob, give me a sense of why do you think that is? I have a hunch as to why that's the case. And it's interesting because, doing something like that with seniority is a specific tactic on how to bust the union, right? They're always looking for where can we cleave. Where can we tear apart the solidarity? And give me your sense of why that was the case in terms of the younger people.
Why did that not work in this case? I think it was because of the education that the union did. I think, I talked to one of the folks that was on the strike committee, and he talked about the outreach that they did to educate the members on what this would mean for them in the future. Because a lot of these folks, they get a union job, on a shipbuilding yard, and this is like they plan to be there for 46 years, like that one guy that I was talking about. They plan to be there for 46 years. They want to retire there. They want to have a good life, and so I think a lot of it had to do with the education and Max Alvarez, who hosts the Working People's podcast. He's been on TMBS. He interviewed one of the younger people. I talked to some of the older folks that have been there longer. He interviewed one of the younger folks, and one of the things that she talked about was the fact that like there's kind of a sense of like this is what we deserve among those young workers there. Like we deserve to be able to have a good job into our middle and old age. And so do these people that work with us day by day, and so we're gonna fight for ourselves, and we're gonna fight for our brothers and sisters on the job, and it's just really among all of the just terrible things that are happening right now, that's a little bright spot. The largest private sector strike in the country in 2020 was completely successful. They got everything that they were asking for and more.
That's great. Jacob, I appreciate the call. It really is heartening.
Sam,
yeah.
One more thing.
Gotta be quick.
This is a little bit more lighthearted. I noticed that when you Google the station number that I am on, the first image that comes up is an image I co-host in a Teamsters Cannabis Workers Union T-shirt. So I thought that was fun.
Pretty cool. All right, Jacob. What's your station again? What's the name of your show?
The Valley Labor Report on in Huntsville, Alabama.
All right, folks can check that out. Thanks a lot, Jacob. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Tim.
Right. It is heartening. It also is. It is also, I think, consistent with my theory that just like younger people are just. I don't want anybody to get upset about this, but I think just sort of on balance, just slightly better. That's all I'm saying. And I include myself not in that cohort. So don't, and obviously the people who listen to the show who are not younger are the better part of their generation. It's just that the younger people, for whatever reason, are, they get what's going on a little bit more. Now, part of it is also, they have the advantage of like showing up at the party after it's already gone like bad. And so it's easier to see it when you show up and the party's bad than you've been at the party all night and you're still thinking about how the party was at the beginning. You know what I mean? Right? Does that make sense? Right?
Yeah. I mean, young people are also way more screwed on average, statistically speaking. I don't have the charts in front of me, but I've seen them.
Families.
But that's what, I mean, on some level, that's saying the same thing, is that like, the opportunities, it's hard to remember what the party was like when you showed up at first. You just presume like, oh, well, it was tough to get here and blah, blah, blah. And, we had to go out and get beer and I don't know. My point is that like, it's just the situation for younger people is a little bit more explicit than it was for earlier generations.
Yeah. The people who were already at the party, they drank all the beer. They did all the drugs. I'm sober. What the hell?
Mm-hmm. Sorry about that, folks. Calling from a 617 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Tim calling from Boston, guys.
Hey, Tim. What's on your mind?
Two things. First, I think it was last Monday on Morning Joe, there was an expert Trump watcher who had originally interviewed him and exposed some nefarious thing early on in the presidency, who said he had caught Trump admitting their plan for the election, which was that the Congress would decide the election. So I thought that was an interesting insight from him.
I mean, he's definitely, I mean, there was the Gelman piece, there was a Jeffrey Toobin piece. There's definitely been conversations where they are, contemplating how do they slow the counts in certain states and set up a situation where state lawmakers and states that are dominated by Republicans, Pennsylvania, remember, the legislature is controlled by the Republicans. They would then pick their electors not based upon who won the vote in their state, but they would just pick it based upon who they want their electors to be. Send it up to Congress, and then in Congress, the way that those electors are accepted by Congress, if they are challenged, is not by sheer numbers of representatives, but rather by the number of states that are dominated by the state delegations. Who has more state delegations? So in other words, when you look at Congress, Democrats have control of Congress because they have more Congress people coming from places like California or New York, for instance. However, the number of states that are represented there that have a majority Republican representatives is something like, I don't know, off the top of my head, I don't remember what it is, but it's maybe like, 27 to 23 or something like that. I don't know exactly what the number is. But they do have a majority. And so that's how that would work.
This guy had brought on someone that's running for election in Florida, and he was saying that particular race was key because of the role Florida would play if it got thrown to Congress. But the more important point that I was calling about was related to RGB's passing. And I'm not like a worshiper of hers, I'm way left, I think, of her. But she had criticisms of Roe v. Wade, to my understanding, from what I've read and what I've heard, that were from the left, where she said that what I'm worried about Roe v. Wade is that as it evolves nationally, lower income women throughout every state will get fucked and not have access to abortions because of the way Roe v. Wade was litigated versus a different, taking a totally different path.
Right.
And I don't think people should forget that about RBG and also I think it's a broader lesson for us. And it reminds me of what they did in, I guess it was Northern Ireland for gay rights. They had a multi-year campaign of introducing normal voters to gay folks so that their theoretical hatred of gays was diluted by.
Tim, I know what you're talking about in terms of RBG's criticism, and I think I think there's something to be said for that criticism. Actually, I'm not even convinced that, frankly, that Obama didn't have a similar critique of that. There's a lot of legal scholars who said that like the right to an abortion probably shouldn't have been founded on the right to privacy. There was probably other parts of the Constitution that might have been more successful in terms of like more legally sound. And then other people who simply say like, this is a political decision and we should have just left it up to the body politic to decide because that makes it more durable. I can tell you this, that the majority of people in this country, the majority of Catholics in this country believe that a woman should have a right to an abortion. So what you're talking about in terms of that analogy with Ireland is actually like, we're already there. It just so happens that we have the polarization that they cured in Ireland by winning the hearts and minds. Right. But I'm suggesting to you that our polarization is in some ways different. And that abortion, look, there was no abortion is a like many of the issues in our politics has been constructed. And that construction was in the service of other issues, right? Like the abortion. And so, and you know, we've done, I don't know, multiple interviews just in the past month, it seems to me, that have raised how that came about. Liberty University was going to lose its tax exempt status under Jimmy Carter because they would not desegregate. And they could not rally people around that. So Paul Weyrich and that whole crew
rallied them around something else,
around abortion. And so, I appreciate the call, Tim. And I would just add that, like, the reason why that works is the same, I think, tied into why you see like QAnon so obsessed about pedophilia. I did an interview with Elie, I can't remember his name, but for Ring of Fire.
Breland.
What was it? Breland. Yes, thank you, Brendan. About 2 weeks ago for Ring of Fire. And he is, apparently there's been research on this, that the whole pedophilia sort of obsession on the right, and we would talk about this, like, why is Mike Cernovich, calling everyone a pedo? Like, what's behind that? And if you dig down to it, it is a very similar issue to abortion. It's a very similar issue to like a whole range of issues that
they're protecting the children.
They're protecting the children from what? And they're protecting the children from pedophilia and that would take place in daycare centers. That's where a lot of this sort of modern day hysteria grew. Now, what is daycare centers? Daycare centers are a relatively, at least in the modern age, new innovation because women became emancipated to have control over their own economic lives to the extent that capitalism allows us to. All right. So I've got that caveat in there.
Thank you.
And it, at least within the context of our capitalist society, sort of began to elevate them, not at parity with men, God forbid, but it allowed for some economic power by women, which threatened the patriarchy, right? Like, dad can't be such a jerk if mom has the ability to go out and make her own money and actually pay for her own food. My mother, when I was my son's age, was not allowed to have a credit card in her name. That's where, like, wasn't that far off, folks. And so things like abortion is another thing that sort of like not only gave women autonomy over their own body, but it gave them autonomy over their own lives in many respects and their trajectory through life. And that was not appreciated by a whole host of religious folks who believe that the woman should really be chattel in the context of a marriage and really in broader society. And that's the way things are going to function. And so a lot of these things were developed, constructed issues that were born out of this, sort of primary anxiety that white men were going to lose their power in society and their economic power, their social power, which, as you can see, the relationship that is tied into those, when women have the ability to make their own money, it changes the social status, the structure, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what's going on there. And it is also no coincidence that the animating issue for, I think it was it Liberty University, I believe at the time was, our tax status is being threatened because we're not allowed to maintain the relationship we want with Black people. And so, again, race, at the very least, in this instance, was a catalyst for the religious right to, instead of like leaving unto Caesar what is Caesar's, to get engaged. And then it just became sort of like a checklist. These are the things that our team is in favor of. And that's why, and because it's really, a lot of these things are just add-ons, like deficit reduction. Well, I mean, guns, women in the kitchen, deficit reduction. Those are the things that our team believes. Well, deficit reductions not necessarily fit into that rubric of, maintaining the patriarchy. And so it can be jettisoned like that. And we've seen that. I mean, the religion that deficit reduction was 5 years ago amongst Republicans relative to now it's amazing, the difference. It's amazing. I mean, it's just like, I've never seen the idea that many people could give up on an idea so easily is pretty, maybe it's encouraging in some way.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like it was a cynical attack on the welfare state to begin with. Right.
And we all know what that, has animated that for many years too. Well, welfare wasn't really a problem until it was available to Black people.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with everything you just said. And it turns out I agree with RBG's critique of Roe versus Wade, which I was not previously aware of. And it kind of ties into some of the critiques that I have of the sort of liberal framework for a lot of these decisions and the bourgeois concept of these sort of individual rights and these negative rights, right? It's the right to privacy. It's the right for every autonomous human being to, do what they want in a libertarian kind of unmolested fashion. It's not about positive rights, right? There's no constitutionally protected right to health care. It's about the state saying, oh, hands off the private sphere, where abortion, as we all know, is part of healthcare. And if we really want to extend that right to everyone, we're going to have to not just keep people from doing it as long as they can pay for it, but, constitutionally guarantee some positive rights, some right to healthcare, some freedom from want, going back to FDR's 4 freedoms and whatnot. And it's also a better way to ensure that women have autonomy and independence from men, like what you were just talking about. It's great if women can get out there in the capitalist economy and make their own money. But what if the economic conditions are bad? Should women still be able to have healthcare that is independent of an abusive husband or boss? I say yes.
I'm not convinced that's also, subject to a similar dynamic. I mean, frankly, it's the same dynamic in the context of why, for a long time in this country. And I should say that I cannot remember who it was, but there was a couple of, I think it was professors, maybe we're talking 5 years from now, because I can't, because of the singularity, I can't differentiate in terms of time. But we had we had a couple of people come explicitly to talk about positive rights that should be at least constructed in that regard. But for years, prior to the ACA debate, we would hear this figure that like $2,300 of every GM car was a function of healthcare or something to that effect. And that was used as a bludgeon. It was deployed in some respects on both sides. It was a way of like, that's why we need to cut their pensions for the workers. But there were other people were using it as like, hey, this is a good argument for single payer healthcare. And I think it's only been somewhat recently that a lot of sort of like policy oriented type of people have become to realize that like efficiency is not simply a question of the first order calculations that you make for the capitalist class, right? Like it might save GM, like a GM could make more money maybe, if you were to nationalize healthcare, let's say, and provide it for everybody, and then GM doesn't have to worry about that. They don't have to lard that cost onto their cars. But
their taxes might go up.
Well, their taxes might, but it's also conceivable that as a corporation, the taxes may not, or certainly maybe it may not go up $2,300 an employee. But what could happen And we saw this in one of my favorite books of 2019, in Wrecked. What could happen is they lose a certain amount of control over their workforce. And that can create all sorts of other problems for them, or at least their perception of other problems, right? I mean, certainly we see examples around the world of car manufacturers, for instance, who function quite well, in fact, better with a more empowered workforce, right? Germany has a lot of union representation on their boards, essentially. It's definitely doable. It's just that in the mindset that that Americans have, there is this sort of fear of empowering workers in any way. And if I have the ability to say to my boss, like, you know what, F you, I'm taking a walk, and I don't have to worry. At the very least, my kid's going to be able to go to the doctor, and I'm going to be able to get my teeth fixed. So, you know, maybe a little bit of a struggle, but it's not like I'm going to die. And in this country, it is sort of like that, maybe. So,
yeah.
Hang in there, Jamie. Let's see what we got here on we'll take one more phone call. Here we go. Calling from a 215 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Sam. It's Mindy. How are you? Hi, guys. I know. I don't know what happened yesterday. Something happened. I don't know why I didn't answer.
I don't know what
All right,
more
so
we're
I
talking
just wanted.
about.
Oh, I think I called yesterday and then the phone didn't pick up and whatever. Okay, so I just wanted to tell you what's going on in Bucks County and my area, the suburbs of Pennsylvania. Why they're so focused. I don't want to get all John from San Antonio on you, but there's 12 million people in Pennsylvania, and 2.2 million are from the suburbs of Philadelphia. So we have three counties. We have Bucks, Delaware, and Montgomery County. And I'm in the second biggest one with 630,000 people here. So that's why they're targeting the suburban people here, because traditionally we were red and now we're like leaning a little bit more toward blue. So 4 years ago, when you would drive up and down like the streets around here, there was tons of Trump signs and tons of Hillary signs, but probably more Trump signs, which was scary. So now when we go out on the main roads, which are really just two road highways because we're on the country, there's no signs anywhere. I mean, literally there's 150 houses in my development. There's one hate doesn't live here sign. And there's one of the Wendy Thomas, the girl that lives behind me. Remember I told you she was running for state legislature? Remember my neighbor?
Right. Oh, well, right. Yeah,
Right.
that you guys
So-
sort of had a falling
right.
out, right?
Well, no, we never were friends, but she
Oh.
came up my driveway and she asked me to vote for her. So she's running again, and she's in a really contentious race that it's every 15 seconds on the TV they're talking about her, like how she voted for like abortion rights and not pro, the other way, the Republican way. So I just wanted to tell you what's going on here. There's no signs other than Brian Fitzpatrick, and the candidate against Brian Fitzpatrick's pretty weak, but he's like completely disengaging himself from Trump. His signs say voted number one independent in the Congress. And he's the only one signs here. There's no signs. My neighbors don't have signs. Last time they all had signs. So I'm kind of feeling like maybe it's going, I don't know. People are maybe scared to put signs out. I mean, I have a Biden sign in my garage and my husband won't let me put out. He's scared that they're going to come and burn the house down around here. But we were in Costco last week, and I said to my husband, I don't want to come here anymore because there's a lot of Trump supporters here, and I'm going to open my mouth to them because I open my mouth to everybody that's not wearing a mask.
Is that right? Okay.
What?
No, I'm being facetious. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Mindy. Go ahead.
No. So like at the post office, because I'm an eBay seller, I am at the post office every day, and there's people. So last week I was at the post office and there was a guy not wearing a mask. He was older. It was a pickup truck. I said, you have to put your mask on. He looked at me like, fuck you. And he didn't say anything. And he got back in the car, and then I rolled down my window and I said, Trump's going to lose. He goes, I hope so. I hate him, which was really weird because he looked like a Trump supporter. I mean, what's a Trump supporter look like? But I would assume he was a Trump supporter. He wasn't wearing a mask. Then I went to Costco and we were getting gas, and my husband told me that somebody's going to beat me up and I better stop talking to these people. And I said, well, then just don't bring me here anymore. You'll go shopping without me because I can't keep my mouth shut. So we were in line we were getting gas, and I said, Kevin, I just don't want to come here anymore because I'm not comfortable. And there's too many Trump supporters in the area. And this guy, with a firefighter hat on, peeked out like a 60-year-old man. He said, there's no Trump supporters left here, which I thought was really interesting. But I don't know what's going on here. There's just no Trump signs anywhere. I mean, even in this area that my husband calls racist row, like it's like starting to look like a little seedy area near me. All Trump, all flags, no Trump signs. I mean, there's Biden signs everywhere. There's in this particular area. There's a lot. I've been seeing some Biden vets for Biden signs. I mean, but there are no Trump signs.
You know, I gotta say, I just got a IM, Mindy, and I don't want to start at something, but this is Cape May Pete says, Mindy is insane. I live a quarter mile from her. Tons of Trump signs and flags. Flags are big, especially on the larger back roads. There are no Biden signs because they haven't opened a voter activation center yet. What do you say to that?
I say that where does he, a quarter mile from me? It's not possible. I mean, I drive around here. It's in all the subdivisions and all the developments. I mean, let him tweet me at MaydayMindy9 and tell me where he lives because I'll even drive around.
Tweet off.
Cape May Pete. You guys should hook up and then you should drive around and pull down Trump flags together. That, of course, is a joke. That, of course, is a joke, everyone. I'm not suggesting anybody. I'm making a joke.
No, well, yeah, that's how I got my Biden sign. I took it from the street. But as far as Cape May Pete, if Cape May Pete's been driving up and down Amsels Road, if he can find a Trump sign, I'll give him $1 for every Trump sign he can find. Because last time they were every 15 feet. Now there's like maybe 4.
You know, listen, I got to be honest with you, Mindy. I have 2 ideas in my head. Oh, apparently you blocked her. Blocked Cape May Pete. Now we know why.
I blocked Cape May Pete.
Mm-hmm.
What's his name? I'll unblock him. What is it?
Cape May Pete is now saying York Road. Like, this is, folks, what, you tell me what other show, never mind political show. You just tell me what other show that is in the country or that has ever existed anywhere where we get this kind of dialogue by near neighbors who have these type of arguments through other people. Nowhere. That's what the show is all about.
Mm-hmm. How does he know where Mindy lives?
Mindy, you guys work this out. He lives in Chester County.
Yeah.
You guys got to work this out, and then you guys got to get together.
Lives in Chester County.
Listen.
Lives in Chester County.
This is like being on the phone with like I don't know, like being with my sisters and talking to my mom, and like they're talking through. Like, I don't want to. Like,
I just wanted to tell you what I was reporting to you. Back to my situation is I don't see any Trump representation here.
Okay.
There's like none. So
let me make my point. My point is this. There is one scenario that I can imagine that Joe Biden is going to crush Donald Trump. That there is just that the dynamic from the 2016 election is not there, whether it's some people on the left are just like they just have said, like, this is, I have had, we've tried the experiment. It didn't work out in the way that we wanted to in some respects. We're ready to end it. Or whether it's also just sort of broadly other groups of people are just like, Joe Biden, I don't really have any strong feelings about him one way or another. I just know I don't like Trump. And that it's quite possible that we could just see a bigger blowout than we have seen in our lifetimes in terms of elections. I mean, maybe Reagan in his reelection was, a big realignment. Maybe we will see something like that. And it's also conceivable to me that we will see something like that on a national scale, but on a sort of more narrow places, more narrowly targeted. The race is close. the voting gets shut down. I mean, the other scenario, those are the two scenarios. And I have to say that, like, when I don't sleep at night, which is every night now, both those scenarios play through my head and have equal weight. One is a far less anxious feeling. The other one is a far more anxious feeling.
Right.
But I don't know. Yeah.
The reason why I say this is because whenever you watch TV, all they're talking about is the suburbs of Pennsylvania. I mean, that's all. I mean, maybe I just hear it because I live in the suburbs.
You can't really judge by signs. That's the other thing, right? Like, you just can't.
Well, you couldn't 16.
Well, I don't know. Maybe, what you need to start doing is keep a journal. And so that we actually, it's not even your memory. It's like we have it specifically, like you're marking down. You've got a grid. And,
well, I have been taking pictures of them and tweeting.
Well, I don't mean take a picture. I'm saying, like, you should have a grid of every single address in like an area. And I mean, think about it, Mindy. Now's the time to go out and do this because you're in the middle of this election, 1 or 2 more cycles, and you could be one of those like gurus that people come to.
Yeah, let's gather some data. See how the signs match up with the results, assuming that we get the results.
I don't think,
Mindy's model. That's what they'll call it. The Mindy model. Appreciate the call.
I'm really interested to hear what Kate May Pete has to say.
Yeah, me too. But you guys hash it out.
My prediction to end this is my county is turning blue.
Boom. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. We will find out from Mindy if her county turns blue. She might be John from San Antonio. Could be sweating it.
The bellwether. A new champion appears.
So this is, I don't know, maybe this is a vision of where Donald Trump will be in 10 years, if he's still alive. I mean, he's an older person. It's made possible that he's not alive. But if he is alive, let's say Donald Trump loses and he doesn't go to prison, or even if he does, maybe he gets out within a couple of years.
He's not going anywhere.
Right. Look, who knows? But the question is, where will he be in 10 years? Well, maybe we have a notion of where he'll be in 10 years. If we look back on someone like Sarah Palin 10, 12 years ago, where was she then? Where is she now? Well, she's up in Alaska and she's putting out this video. I don't know who edited it, but it is her video. Where did she place this? Was this on YouTube? And I don't know. I don't know how you would characterize this. Let's watch it.
Willing to give it up. Lisa Murkowski, this is my house. 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 I'm willing to give it up. I'm willing to give it up for the greater good of this country.
It's a lot of driveway.
The great state. If you can't find it within yourself to do the right thing this time, and at least give a fair shake to the Supreme Court nominee that your president will be bringing before you, you would at least consider. If you can't find it within yourself to do the right thing, it's not America's agenda. And doing what the majority of Americans want you to do what you were sent to Washington, D.C. to do, walk back what you've already committed yourself to, you better backtrack. You know, you had already put yourself in this box saying, no matter who it is, you're not going to support the person, not until you have a chance to appoint a judicial nominee under another president instead of this one. You hoping what? That this president doesn't win? Otherwise, you'd be cooperating with the president. Really what it is cooperating with the majority of Americans who know that it's now or never for America. So much hinges on the Supreme Court. You know the reason. You know why it's so important, and that's why you're thinking you're going to go rogue. You know, there's a time and a place to go rogue. This is the time, this isn't the place. We sure hope that you have it within you to do the right thing this time So you should walk back. We'll forgive you. Wait. You've done this how many times before, though? And you kept saying, forgive you. If you can't do that, remember my house. I can see a lot of things from my house. See? I can see a lot of things. I love my house. See? Lisa, I can see 2022 from my house. Wait.
What?
I think she's saying I will run against you if you don't vote for Amy Coney Barrett. I'm gonna run against you in 2022. I can see the future from my house, which is a play on the fact that she could see Alaska from her house. The editing
Russia.
Russia. I'm sorry. Yeah, exactly. She's in Alaska.
Well, Brendan, I think, forgot a part of the video. Here's the rest of it. So yeah, very strange stuff. So
Yeah.
Oh
I
my
don't know
goodness.
what's going on there.
Yeah, very.
Is that the Black Hole Sun video?
No,
What
that's
was
the
that?
video from the movie The Ring that when you watch it 7 days later.
I was going to say
Oh, shit.
it reminds me of the Blair Witch Project, but you know, it's influenced by many horror movies, I think.
Well, she obviously, I don't know, maybe she edited it, but what I get the sense is that somebody was like, we got to work around some problems here on this video. She's, it's late in the day. I'm sure somewhere it's afternoon. You know what I mean? You get the sense that she's
Well, when the sun never goes down,
right.
Crazy.
It's completely new rules.
Yeah.
I guess so. I really was wanting to know where she was going with the My House thing. It was building a certain kind of dramatic tension and dread that I couldn't place. And then at the end, when she said 2022, I'm like, oh, that's all she's talking about.
That's it. Yeah.
Whatever.
She does have a big driveway, though. It looks like she's getting some big trucks in there or something.
Yeah. I mean, I think she should run. I think she represents the Republican Party as good as anybody. So,
well, let's be clear here. She was the vice presidential nominee 12 years ago. So anybody who's like, where did Donald Trump come from? I mean, she was the vice presidential nominee 12 years ago that John McCain had picked. You want to know where Donald Trump came from? He came from the Republican Party. That's where he came from.
Among other things.
Among, I mean, yes. I mean, he was born of a mom, I guess. But I mean, this is an outgrowth of the Republican Party. Donald Trump was the natural growth and I don't know if he's the culmination. One could hope, but he certainly for this era was the culmination of the Republican Party.
Yeah, he is also the culmination of a whole bunch of systemic rot that can't be pinned on a party in particular, and larger social forces in the development of this sick, sad world.
That's conceivable, but it was I don't think Donald Trump could have won the nomination in the Democratic Party. Do you?
No.
Right. I mean, so the fact that the Democrats nominated the wrong candidate and where I'm quite convinced any of their other candidates. But you hear, what I'm addressing is the notion that somehow the Republicans have been Trumpified, and that has it backwards. It is Trump is simply the Republicans manifested in a specific individual. And that's the bottom line. Democrats charge Republican poll watch today will harass Negroes and the poor. Republicans say honesty is the goal. 100,000 sentinels in 35 cities will seek only to avert voting fraud.
November 3rd,
that's from 1964.
Stand back, stand by.
Right? I mean, honestly, like, if you had covered that up, the only thing that would have been a tip that it wasn't from this year would have been the use of Negroes, right?
Yep.
I mean, or that the New York Times would give it that size font at this point.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the thing, is that there are other problems going on, and Donald Trump has been the answer to the Republican Party regardless of.
Yeah, I mean, you could also argue he's the culmination of other pathologies like inheritance or, real estate in this country, right?
Nativism. Daniel Denver's book tracks that going back 100 years.
Right. And I think it's just all those things, the confluence of a lot of different things, and just the Republican Party in their sort of that dynamic where they were basically training their voters to subscribe to things that the voters really had no even relationship to. And, that happens with every political party, right? I mean, the Democrats were far more against the surveillance state until Barack Obama was president. And they, there's a whole, they were against sort of the way that immigrants are treated, far more so during Trump than Obama. Now is more extreme and whatnot. But I mean, so that dynamic is not unique to the Republican Party. But the idea, just to get back to it, that deficit reduction was such a religion for the Republican Party. There was no value to your average person about deficit reduction. It was just simply a story that they had been told, that they were told, like, this is what you believe in. And there was it was just another sort of cultural signifier that was completely, it's like, I can understand if you're a rural person and it's like, the Second Amendment and guns rights and, libs don't know the difference between an AR-15 and a 22 or whatever it is, or difference between a magazine and a round or something.
Working on it.
Well, I mean, but the idea that okay, so, at least that has some type of cultural relationship to you. It has some type of you can, even if your perspective on it may be, from my perspective, a little bit twisted, it's still at least it's not completely untethered from you. But deficit reduction, I mean, give me a break.
Yeah. Nobody cares about that outside of Grover Norquist and his little group of friends.
Well,
Pelosi staffers,
Bowles, who's advising Joe Biden. There, Nancy Pelosi, she cares about it, but it is I at least
I'm saying no normal people care about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I can understand why some of those type of people do, because for them it's a way of making sure that the power dynamics in the country don't shift in a dramatic way. But for your average voter, I mean, it's beyond abstract. It's actually detrimental to you. But
yeah. I think we're saying a lot of things that rhyme. Nothing that you're saying is untrue in the context of the Republican Party. And nothing that I'm saying is untrue in the context of the larger history. And look, I said this whole thing without saying capitalism once. So
too late. You just did.
Pretty proud of myself.
Here is Marco Rubio. I mean, I think the real question for someone like Chuck Schumer right now is how much control do you have over your caucus? A. B, how much of a will do you have to actually put up a fight? Now, part of the reason why the senators are going to be sitting there going well, we can't force them to get all 51 votes by themselves to have a quorum every day, because then they'll do that to us at one point. But it is that type of thinking that it's a thinking that, of course, puts themselves first in front of the party. I mean, the irony is that these are the least democratic partisan people. There is no solidarity for a greater mission. Senators are really out for themselves to a large extent. There is no sense of what can we do as a caucus and what can we do as a party? I mean, that's the irony of all of this, is that, like, people talk about the Democratic Party. These senators, that's an umbrella organization for them. They're out for themselves. If they really, and by out for themselves, it's really just sort of like almost like their lifestyle at that point. Like, I don't want to, if we force the Republicans to show up with a 51 majority, then they could do that to us. And that would suck. But Chuck Schumer has to step up and be an actual leader and tell his party, you've got to get, we're all going to be on the same page. We got to push this appointment, this confirmation process. We got to push it into the lame duck. If they believe even an ounce of their own rhetoric, that's what's got to be done. Here is Marco Rubio. He is trying to basically convince his colleagues that, it's not worth it.
Senator, is the president right? If the Democrats were in your shoes, they'd do exactly the same thing?
Yeah, and look, here's what people have this all twisted, okay? In 2016, they keep comparing it to Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland was not going to be confirmed. The Senate was not going to, a Republican Senate was not going to confirm someone that doesn't fit our criteria. What they were asking for at that time wasn't even that he be confirmed. They were asking that he have a hearing. And the Republican position is, look, if this was 2 years into the Obama term, you can make that argument. But it's the end of his term, the end of his second term. He's not even coming back. He's not even accountable to the voters. We're not going to waste our time on a hearing for a nominee that in the end is not going to be confirmed. That's a very different situation we have here right now. And this vacancy has occurred.
But let me just point out something that little Marco is not saying. That Senate wasn't doing anything. They had plenty of time to do that. You want to reject a nominee, it is certainly well within the rights of senators, in my opinion, to vote against the nominee. But to not give them a vote because of this standard that, it's not just a question of there's an election coming up. It's actually, the president himself is not up for re-election. Why can't you just also say, like, look, Donald Trump's so down the polls, he's probably not going to win the presidency. I mean, this is just all garbage, right? Schumer has the ability to do this thing. They can stop playing around and just gum up the works and do everything they can. You've got people writing about it. This is not rocket science. Continue.
Back, he's not even accountable to the voters. We're not going to waste our time on a hearing for a nominee that in the end is not going to be confirmed. That's a very different situation we have here right now. And this vacancy has occurred. The president has a constitutional, not right, obligation to nominate someone. It's someone that I support, that the majority of senators and Republican senators are going to be able to support because she meets the criteria of everything we look for in a Supreme Court justice. So why wouldn't we confirm someone like that? It was no mystery that if you elected Republicans to the Senate and Donald Trump to the presidency 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, that we would put people up that were strict constructionists, that were going to interpret the Constitution according to its original meaning. So, I mean, people know that, and we're very, very clear about that. I've certainly been very clear about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the little Marco may be right, but it's certainly within the rights of everybody. If anything, the Democrats have been less confrontational than I think their voters want them to be. So they should be gumming up the works. And it is certainly just as constitutional to have 11 Supreme Court justices as it is to deny the president a hearing on his nominee. Certainly there's total parity there in terms of the constitutionality, the legality of that. They should do it. And the politics would say, gum up the works. Plenty of time in the lame duck. If they feel that strongly about it, they could do it in the lame duck. It's going to cost them more politically. That's the game that is being played here. The game is, even if you're going to lose a fight, how do you make it cost more politically? And that is a game that the Democrats seem constitutionally allergic to playing. And you can speculate on the reasons. And they can range, again, from personal inconvenience to an agenda that is, contrary to an ideology. But I just, I don't know. I don't know how that's a benefit. I mean, it's not like the Supreme Court has been, it's not like they're putting people on there on the Supreme Court who are like, there should be a 20-hour work week. I mean, that's not what's happening here. So the Democrats need to fight this. They need to fight this.
Yeah. And to the degree that we can, the people need to fight it as well. Like I don't believe that we're really equipped to do anything that massive right now that would exert power on such a grand scale that could actually stop it. We could certainly have some hard pickets in front of the Senate, tie people up for a day or two, keep them from being seated, because we have to buy some time.
But also, I mean, I don't know, in this, if you could socially distance outside of Chuck Schumer's house, I don't know. I mean, I know that Chuck Schumer doesn't like that. People go out there. Maybe that would convince him. I don't know. I don't know exactly what he's got planned and what he's doing in terms of this. Maybe he can't convince his senators. But, why are you a leader of the Senate if you have no ability to sort of sell people on a very obvious proposition?
Yeah.
And if Chris Coons wants to be the one to show up there and provide the Republicans with their quorum, then make him pay a price for it. It's not the responsibility of other senators who care about the Supreme Court and these rights that are and the efficacy of government to protect Chris Coons.
Yeah. And this is something that I do think the left should get involved in. I've gone back and forth about it. I've gone back and forth with my co-hosts on the Antifada. But it really seems to me like, okay, people are worried it's going to legitimize the courts if we make a fight over the courts. No. The courts are being delegitimized no matter what any of us do. And if we can show that we care about this, short-term battle and get in the fight with liberals who also care about it, when it comes time, when it fails, when our institutions fail, when the norms crumble and fail to protect us, and people are looking for answers of what we need to do to un-F the world in the long term, they're going to be a lot more likely to listen to us.
And I would also add that the expansion of the court, what that does is it makes it more explicit that this body is how undemocratic that body in the institution is. And I would imagine that if the Republicans are, after the Democrats do, the Republicans will expand it even more. And with each expansion, the sort of myth that has been around the Supreme Court that they are just following the law crumbles a little bit more. And that's just the reality. Militant apathy. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Biden never said he wouldn't expand the Supreme Court. No, he didn't. I mean, he does not want to get into that, which I'm glad he doesn't. I don't think he's in any. I don't think he has to tell. I don't think he has to tell what he's going to do with that. They want to use it as some excuse, and you can just say, like, look, it's hypothetical. I don't know. I'll see what the situation is when we get there. Calling from a 908 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 908? 908?
Oh, hi. Sorry, I was muted. My name is Evan. I'm calling from New Jersey.
Evan from New Jersey. What's on your mind?
Well, after that debate, I drank a lot, and then I started to look up some data regarding COVID.
You sound like you listened to the Majority Report.
Yes, sir. So I was a little concerned because in over 40 states, COVID cases are in a problematic situation. They're either rising or stagnant. Stagnant is not good. As things open up more, I fear that the cases, like our second wave, is going to be astronomically different compared to what Europe is currently going through. I mean, cases are ballooning in the UK and France. They just peaked in India, so hopefully they start to fall. But the world is experiencing a harsher second wave, and I fear ours is sort of shadowed by the size of our first wave. And we're going to see exponential increases unless behavior changes radically soon, especially with the colder weather. So just wanted to call in, kind of freaked me out a little bit. And
well, then in that case, I certainly appreciate your deciding to freak everyone else out as well. I mean,
I wanted to share within that.
Right. Yes. I appreciate that. That is that is now basically all that I experience. It's just the adoption of other people's anxieties. But I would be lying if I didn't say that this has not been an anxiety of mine for some time. And literally like a week ago, I was like, you know what? Maybe those epidemiologists who all came on and said 6-month peak to peak, maybe they're just wrong. Like maybe this is just a different trajectory. And New York has had one day of 3% positivity rate. I don't know what today is. Big part of it is the Hasidic ultra-Orthodox Jewish community. They don't seem to believe in masks because apparently God will protect them.
They do not wear masks.
They do not wear masks.
They really don't.
I've seen it. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, they're not the only ones. But
they're not the only ones, but they also, they're a tight-knit community. They're getting together. They're not social distancing. There was an outbreak up in Rockland County where there's a big community there. They travel back and forth and stay within the community, and it is causing big problems. And it is, it's a problem. And, we'll see where this leads. I mean, look, in South Dakota, it was bikers. In New York, every geographic locale, more or less, has its, weak underbelly when it comes to this type of thing, right? In New York and Brooklyn area, maybe it's the ultra-Orthodox Hasidim. In South Dakota, maybe it's the bikers. In, Florida, maybe it's like the 20-year-old partiers. I mean, who knows, right? But the bottom line is there's such a lack of cohesion in our society that there is, and such a credibility problem with any type of authority. And I don't even mean like authority that has power, but authority in terms of authority in terms of
expertise.
Expertise, yes.
Yeah. This is not the kind of authority the anarchists are talking about when we say we don't trust authority. Anarchists listen to scientists. All right.
There you go. Exactly. And so here's the areas of concern in is this wow.
This is in the city.
They come. It feels like they're coming for us, right? Like you can see, it's almost like you can see, like it's almost like a cloud front coming in, right?
Encircling.
Yep. My daughter, she's not going to school, but the area where her school is was there, and so, I mean that's the deal. Is it your alarm clock, Jamie?
Oh my God. It's this robot vacuum. I cannot figure out how to program it right. It just goes on at like random times. It's an off-brand one.
Right.
The cats ate it. I might return it. I don't know.
Does it work?
It works okay, but I can't figure out, it just goes on at random times and I can't figure out how to change it. I feel like such a boomer.
Let's take another call here. Calling from an 815 area code. There you go. 815 area code. Who's this?
Hi, Sam. This is Victor from Chicago.
Victor from Chicago. What's on your mind, Victor?
Yeah, I have a two-part question. Part one is, how come they don't go after Bill Barr for impeachment, which would be an easier route due to the last 12 months of his actions currently?
I mean, why didn't they go after Trump's taxes? Why don't they go after, there's a whole host of things. the Democrats are afraid of being seen as being too active. Like their whole strategy, including Joe Biden, and to a certain extent, this is like, obviously is an attitude to some extent that is adopted by the Democratic voter, which is the idea: lay low. And
right.
And I mean, look, I think there's probably cultural reasons, on some level for some of this as well. But I don't know. It would be interesting to go into it with somebody about that. But they don't. They've dropped the ball on oversight.
Yeah.
Beyond comprehension. People should look at Jeff Hauser's Twitter feed. He is with the Revolving Door Project, I think it is, and that's his beat.
Yeah, and then there's the other thing is where Trump's going to say he's going to litigate the election in court. Well, he's already lost that, because if he goes into the lower court, there's two doctrines that people are going to look at: the clean hands doctrine, and the other coin to that is the doctrine that is the forfeiture under wrongdoing doctrine, which basically go hand in hand.
Right, of course.
So
what are those? Will you tell me what those are?
The clean hands doctrine and the doctrine of forfeiture by wrongdoing.
Well, I don't know what those mean.
Basically saying a litigant can't walk into court and say, here, I want justice and I want to win, but yeah, I caused the problem that I'm in court for.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I mean, it's, how has he caused the problem? By talking?
No, but like by instituting the blockade against the mail, post office.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd have to prove that. And I don't know, I don't know that we have the proof at this point that he directed Louis DeJoy to do it.
Well, I mean, the removal of the sorting machines, that's part one. And
but I mean, did Donald Trump direct him to do that?
Probably not. Nobody really knows.
Well, that's my point.
He could have done it on his own accord.
That's my point. I mean, my point is he probably, I think Louis DeJoy knew what Donald Trump wanted, but it would be very difficult to prove. But I mean, but I do appreciate knowing what the clean hands doctrine is.
I mean, yeah, you're most welcome.
Thank you. Have a good day.
I
got to go.
Have a good day. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. Sorry about that. All right. We'll do one more caller. We'll do two more. Here's 626. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Aaron from California.
Aaron from California. What's on your mind?
Oh, I just wanted to say that I'm a libertarian, and I know your podcast.
How does this happen all the time?
Huh?
Sorry, no. That was just ignore the peanut gallery. Go ahead. Your name is Aaron?
Okay.
You're from California?
Yeah.
You're a libertarian?
Yeah. Okay. And I noticed that your podcast is anti-libertarian. And I
don't like to think of myself as anti anything, but
okay.
But I mean, if it's easier for a shorthand, okay.
Well, actually, my question though what are you?
What am I? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Old?
Like, are you progressive? Are you?
I am of the left. I don't really. To be honest with you, I've never been somebody who's been very too concerned with picking a name for my set of beliefs.
Okay, I know what you mean. I kind of feel the same way. I don't even like calling myself sorry, a libertarian, because I feel like each individual has a unique perspective.
And of course, telling yourself you're a libertarian is not a very nice thing to do to yourself.
I'm actually okay with it. It's better than being progressive.
Okay. So, Aaron, what does a libertarian mean then to you?
Well, I guess for me, it's kind of like I'm limited government, pretty much the individual.
This concept of limited
individual
government,
sovereignty.
What does that mean? Limited government. I'm not sure I understand. Do you mean in terms of dollars, or do you mean in terms of like functioning? What do you?
Okay. So pretty much, I guess I'm more of like the John Lockean kind of limit to government. Pretty much government's only role is to do nothing but to protect your rights to life, liberty, and property, kind of like a minarchist. I mean, I guess one of the roles of government that I wouldn't be like advocating, but I'd be complicit would be taxes and roads and military and police. But I think that's as far as I can go.
Taxes, roads, military, police, fire department?
Not really.
Not fire department? Okay. And,
no.
You want to put out a fire, you pay for it yourself, my friend.
Okay. All
and
right.
so the police is just to protect mainly property? That's why the government needs to step in there?
Yeah, I think there needs to be a medium to honoring and respecting property rights.
Okay. And
to an extent, though.
Yeah, to an extent. To what extent? I mean, so at what point can I go and take your stuff?
Well, I guess the extent of property, like I think an example would be in California. There's this huge plot of land that's pretty much owned by one guy. And obviously that I don't necessarily agree with it because it's just empty land. And his purpose is just to, go for the highest bidder. And that's something I don't agree with. It's something that I prefer there be a little bit more reform to it, like a limit to that stake.
So you would have government limit how much property you could own?
Depending on the use of it, not just the plot of land. That's pretty much.
Okay, so you would have government, but government would have the ability to limit how much property you could own.
Depending on the use of it.
I understand that you have a certain criteria that you would develop as to when government could step in and stop your accumulation of that property. But you're okay. Yeah. You're okay with that, but not necessarily a fire department. You think that should be privatized. So if you don't have money, you burn. You burn.
Not necessarily.
Well, I mean, not necessarily, but that's sort of, if I said to you, like, hey, I'm going to light your house on fire. The fire department might not necessarily show up. Would you be?
Well, no, I mean, if you intentionally try to burn someone's property, of course.
Oh, no. Okay. Well, let me do this scenario.
You're talking about some kind of natural disaster, I'm assuming, right?
No. Let's say this. Do you believe in rental properties?
Sure.
Okay. So you're renting a property from me.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't believe in government having any type of like restrictions on like, I mean, do you believe in codes, like building codes?
No, not really.
Okay.
I think
fair enough. Now, are you an electrician?
Somewhat. Okay. Not really. I do electronics, but no, I've not.
Okay,
I haven't fitted a house.
All right.
Okay.
So I've got the house there, and guess what I did? Now you don't know this because you don't have one of those machines that you don't have one of those laparoscopic video cameras that can go into the walls. But you know what I did? Save some cash. I wired it pretty cheaply in your house. I didn't. My fuse box doesn't measure up to your load and this and that. And but you know why I did that? Because I got a decent amount of insurance. And I'm not going to spend the money on you because you're a renter. And this thing starts to burn. And of course, I haven't paid for a fire department because I got fire insurance, man. I don't care. And you burn and die. You're okay with everything that just took place in that scenario, correct?
No, I mean, I think that's kind of horrible that someone was negligent in constructing a home and which.
Well, negligent. What do you mean negligent? What is the definition of negligence in your world? Who sets up that definition of negligence? I did what was in my most economic interests. You did what was in yours. Why do you think you're living there?
Okay. Then maybe to counteract that problem is the solution is to know what you're living in. I mean, if that's becoming a problem, then I think the knowledge of knowing.
If you don't have your electrician's degree, that's not my problem.
You don't need you don't need electrician's degree. You can actually get advice from other people from their guidelines that would know. I mean, it's called education, sir.
Oh, okay. All right. And so you're going to be good at how are you on HVAC? Because I also cut some
HVAC.
corners. Yeah, I cut some corners on the whole furnace thing, and there may be some carbon monoxide in your apartment. But now it's you can't smell it. But there's no governments that's going to tell me I can't put carbon monoxide in there if it's going to cost me money.
Well, you can. I mean, you're a consumer. You can tell them, "Oh, make sure there's no carbon monoxide. There's nothing like that.
Okay,
it's safe and it's
there's
not going to
no.
kill me."
I don't. You know what? To be honest with you, I don't know. Do you want to move in or not?
You don't know? Well, then find out.
Well, I don't
If
want
that's
to.
your
Do you want to
concern.
move in or not to my house? You want to move into my
All right,
apartment?
I
or not?
mean, sure. I mean, I'll be like, nah, I'm good. I think I want to
good
know
luck.
more
Go
about
across
this
the street
property.
to my friend Bill's place. Because guess what? He's going to tell you the same thing.
You never know. I might know more. Like maybe that person will actually know. Maybe it's not Bill. Maybe it's Steve will tell me.
Yes.
And then I'll
maybe
I mean, it's the same thing with it's the same thing with cars. It's like that.
Actually, no, it's not the same thing with cars because where do you live? California? You got a lemon law there, right? It's illegal for someone to sell you a car that has like the odometer's been turned back or there's problems. In fact, if you buy a used car, you can return it within a certain period of time because of that lemon law. But in your world, government doesn't have the ability to do that because that expands government, right? Because there have to be some agency to do this.
You're making a lot of assumptions. I'm not saying like if I get a lemon, like I'm not gonna like do something about it. Like tough luck, buyers beware. Like I said, I mean, I do believe in government when it comes to contracts, property rights, and I like the list. I do believe in contracts. So if I have a contract and I tell that person, are you sure the odometer hasn't been spun? You haven't done that. You didn't do any of that. All right, let's sign a contract. Make sure everything is perfect.
I got news for you. I got news for you.
Yeah. What is it?
And this is why we have lemon laws. Because you know what happens in the world that you're talking about? All the car dealers say, like, can we just all agree here? We're not going to give contracts. We're not going to give you an assurance on the car. No.
Okay, then you're a consumer. Don't buy it.
Right. And guess where you'll buy your
carless.
Car? Nowhere. Because why do you think?
That's your imagination.
No, that's not my imagination. Why do you think there is a lemon law? Why do you think a lemon law existed? Because there was no reason for one?
Of course.
Or do you think that
I don't believe
do you think that lemon laws preceded the actual manufacturing of cars?
You know what you should do, Mr. Cedar? You should if that's a huge concern, let's just say there is no lemon law. If you're really concerned about it, then make an organization to ensure that vehicles are good. They actually have organizations for electronics.
Hold on, wait a second. I'm still in my course learning about electricity so that I don't burn up in my house.
I mean,
because there's no code.
But you seem really concerned about it, so maybe you should.
Maybe I should.
I mean, that's why he's enrolled in electricians and HVAC lessons.
And I don't mean to be.
I would imagine that politician who introduced the lemon law was like, nobody needs this. But I'm going to pass it anyways because I am why did the government do this? Why did they pass the lemon law? In your mind, what is the theory behind why?
I'm pretty sure there's a reason because there are actually.
Wait,
lemon. I get it.
The phone doesn't work now. How perfect is that? Libertarians always have a problem with their phones. Because they're using an off-grid phone system, one that doesn't involve public easements for phone lines. Are you there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Can we ask the caller, what do you think about voting? Do people vote in your system, and what can voting and legislation do, and what is it stopped from doing by your minarchist constitution?
I mean, I guess. I mean, that's one thing, though. I mean, we live in a democracy. I wouldn't try to, override it with my libertarian ideas. I mean,
for instance, if people vote for Medicare for all, for instance, like that's just democracy. So you support full democratic rights for you, one person, one vote.
It doesn't really matter to me, either electoral or popular. It really doesn't matter to me.
I would just suggest to you that the only way libertarian ideas win is by disenfranchising people. But as long as
disenfranchise,
of course,
I'm sorry.
of course. I mean, you'd have to do it with like, only people who own property could vote. Or, like even property rights itself. Like, how would you establish property rights in your system where the government only deals with roads and police department?
Well, roads, I'm just complicit. I don't necessarily believe in roads, but I don't want to argue on that point.
Well, I'm not asking you to argue about roads. I'm just saying, how do you delineate property in your vision?
Well, it is a little complicated. I do believe that if you're using the land in a purpose, which in
your
some way that's kind of
what if
labor based, kind of like if you're using it with the means of producing something of value, I'd say like, all right, let's just say like, I put a stake like a mile over there and mile over here, and someone asks me, what do you want to do with it? Like, oh, I want to sell it to someone, and I'm going to get like the city council to, give me that permit. I would be like, no, that's dumb. But if that person's going like a staking a mile away, and he's producing some company with parking space, with means of producing something of value to society, then that makes sense.
And who adjudicates that?
I guess the community. I do believe in some central authority.
I'm trying to figure out. You're the one who's just said that the government should only deal with creating roads. The police, not even the fire department in your mind.
Only complicit on that. I'm actually kind of close to capital anarchy.
Only complicit?
Yeah, like I'm not going to like go against it. Like I'm not going to be for it. So it's like, for instance, like the responsibility of roads is not towards the state. I'm not going to cry over it. I'm going to still live my life.
No, I understand. Well, you're living your life right now. So I think you can handle it. I think you can handle it. I'm not.
I'm not going to like go on a political rampage on it.
I know. I understand. I'm just trying to. All I'm doing here is I'm not going to exclude you from the island here. I don't have the ability to do that. I'm just trying to figure out like what is your vision of a world, because frankly, none of what you're talking about hopefully is going to come about, and everything that could happen on the way to there would, I think, be detrimental to people and society.
Okay, but and I think the same about you.
Right? No, I understand, but I'm asking, like, what is your? I'm just trying to get a sense of what society would look like if you. Obviously not in charge, because you don't want to have that monopolization of force, right? But if it was just to evolve in this way in some fashion, how would you delineate property? Would you even have courts?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. There should be some kind of authority to decide it. And I think preferably would be an authority within the community as opposed to somewhere in Washington or in Sacramento. Like I live in a city called Glendora.
Right.
And I would assume, obviously, you know how it works.
So could you only buy property in Glendora?
I'm sorry?
Well, I'm just curious, like in terms of jurisdictions, like how would this work out? So you don't want any type of, why would
the foundation? Okay. All right. Well, I guess the foundation of a property would be not based on necessarily in the beginning of, the city permitting or some kind of central authority permitting someone using land, but in a way to where if someone, let's just say there's a vacant spot of land and somebody wants to use it and they use it in a way that's valuable, then I think a central authority within like its own community should respect that.
Okay. So, Aaron, you set up a piece of property, you start to farm it a little bit. Okay. It's a 1 acre plot of land, and you farm it, and you're growing some lettuce.
Okay.
And I come over and, or let's say you're just planning to, you haven't actually put the seeds in the ground, but you've started to till the ground a little bit. And I come over and I go, oh, wait a second. I've got an oil rig. I'm putting it right there. And I start digging it. Okay. Whose property is this? Because I'm getting more value. I'm getting more value out of it.
Well, no. Then there's also precedent, because the person who's farming and tilling the land has precedent over the person who wants to dig oil.
How do you establish that?
Tell them, no, you can't use it because this guy's using it for farmland.
Who's them? Who is telling you this? The city?
What? Some central authority, yeah.
Some central authority?
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you determine how central it is? Is it going to be somebody? Are you just doing it by block? Are you doing it by town or city?
I keep on telling you based on how they use the land.
Who uses?
Keep on telling you, huh?
Listen,
anybody.
Here
like,
it is.
You just
I have an oil company. I have an oil company.
Yeah.
You find a piece of land that's vacant. Okay. You go and you start to dig around in there. You're about to plant seeds. I come over and you have my machine and I start to dig. Okay. You and I have a disagreement.
Okay.
What happens next?
Like I said, the person you mentioned who's still in the farm would take precedence over. So
you get precedence?
It would be in favor. Huh?
You get precedence.
The person, yeah, I get. If I were to be the farmer who was there first, then yes, I would respect that.
I was there first. I say I was there first. Prove it.
Okay. I'm pretty sure there would be proof for it. I mean, you wouldn't establish property rights without some kind of written assessment.
Okay, who wrote it?
About.
Who wrote it?
The central authority that whatever it can be from the community that's been established or from a city council.
Okay, but what if the community is a state? Like, how many people are allowed to be a community in your situation?
Whatever is, I guess, in cooperation. So, for instance, like if there's like a community of like 1,000 people, and then there's some kind of an agreement.
What defines a community in your mind?
A cooperation of people, a good amount of people. It can be 1,000. It could be 10,000.
But I'm just saying, you're saying that Sacramento is wrong. So you don't believe in the concept of states. You don't believe in the concepts of a country in terms of, because you had a problem with Washington. I mean, I presume that's what you meant by that. So I'm just curious. I'm just trying to say, like, how do we...
No. Well, I mean, yeah, that's kind of like, that's honestly what I pretty much advocate. I do think that the country, I mean, even our founding fathers had agreed that more power should go to the states more than the central government, although that was like an argument.
You just said not even to Sacramento.
Hamilton.
So you don't want states either.
But it's a similar idea, just in more, I guess, more extreme in my perspective. So it's not just states' rights, but I do believe in more community rights. And the community, what defined is based on what can be collaborated and organized within the area. Like, for instance, it can be even a community of residents. Like, I live in a residential area of like 20 homes, and that could be a community, and that could be of its own, and they can elect its own central authority.
Okay, so I'm not from your community of 20 homes. I come in.
Okay.
I've got an oil rig, and I got a bunch of guys.
Okay.
What are you going to do about it?
I mean, I guess. Well, what are you going to do about it? I'm actually kind of curious. What is that? Are you going to like shoot them?
Are my guys going to shoot you? No, they're just going to pick you up, place you over there. I just don't want you here. Okay, bye.
How are they going to do that?
They're going to pick you up, and they're going to walk you over there.
How are they going to pick me up? I weigh a lot.
They're going to roll you off the property.
I don't know. I don't think they can. What? Just me individually, or the rest of the community?
No, you.
What about just me? They're going to pick me. Why would they just pick me up?
There's only 20 homes. All right, I got 50 guys. They got guns.
Okay.
They got guns.
Okay.
They got guns. What are you going to do about it?
Okay. I guess it would be a battle.
We're from the other community.
Yeah. Okay.
We want
so
this.
It would be gang on gang. It would just be, all right.
Feudalism almost, right?
No. I mean, like I said, I do believe in a military.
Whoa.
I do believe, I mean, like, I'm not saying the U.S. won't exist. I'm not saying, like, I just believe when it comes to things, responsibilities such as property rights, it should go to the individual. And if it ever exacerbated to the point where people are shooting each other, then sure, bring in the National Guard and settle it that way.
So but you don't think that they have a mechanism in which to determine whose property it is, that there's no laws, that there's no government that has done this? Like, I just don't get like how your system is supposed to operate.
Can I jump in here for a minute? Yeah. It's always a little bit frustrating for me to listen to libertarians because sometimes they sound like they're close to understanding things and other times not so much. And by understanding things, of course, I mean agreeing with me because I am right. What you're talking about here.
Good argument.
With thank you. I know what you're talking about here with somebody having rights to the land and then someone else comes in and takes it. That is literally how private property came about in the first place. You want to go back to
you don't believe in private property. You don't believe in private property.
No, of course not. But you want to go back to the enclosure.
I can go into your home. I can go into your home.
Why do you believe in private property? Everything. Where do you think that this right comes from? Can I ask you? Does it come from God?
Based on the community agreement? Oh, no, it doesn't have to be from God. I mean, if you believe it's from God. But it's just based on what was an agreement. And sure, you can have a larger army and tell you, fuck off. That can happen. Obviously, it's not right, but that's the thing. Do we want to live in a society like that? No.
So you're not talking about the abstract concept of the right, which is a liberal concept. It's an ideal, right? Something that exists, this abstract right that exists regardless of whatever is going on in the world. No, you're saying that the right exists because people take it for themselves. It's not a moral justification.
Essentially what it is.
He's saying, so you don't believe, hold on for a second. You don't believe that property,
it's like right of conquest.
You don't believe that property is a natural right. It should be determined by, rights should be given by a community. That's what you're suggesting.
I mean, sure. I mean, there's no, in essence, there's no foundation for like some kind of like spiritual or natural authority.
Most libertarians believe that there is a natural pre-existing right to property. Now, the fact that you don't, great. It's just why this arbitrary decision that a community, I don't know if there's a maximum number of people that you have when you define.
You're the one being meticulous about those numbers. I don't know why. It's just a general consensus that the community should, however they.
Well, then what's wrong with a country having a general consensus?
What's wrong with a smaller country having a general consensus?
I got no problem with a smaller country. So you're talking, how many countries do you anticipate being in the landmass that we now know as the United States?
I'm sorry?
How many different countries do you anticipate there being in the landmass of the United States if we were to follow your prescription?
I mean, I would assume it would just be one country, but the autonomy level would be different. So, for instance,
give me a
like
sense
right now,
of what the autonomy level
and actually, so like for instance, right now, I mean, it's pretty much we have a centralized government, but we also have 50 states, and in states they usually deal with murder. They usually deal with things within their own state, as opposed to the federal government. They deal with
crimes.
Well, let's just say
they're state crimes. They're federal crimes, correct? Right?
Federal crimes, counterfeiting, all that. That's their responsibility. I guess what I would do when it comes to instead of like Sacramento dealing with, I mean, we even have that here right now, like to where Sacramento, they don't create police forces. I mean, each city, each community, in a way, they create their own.
Correct.
And the state just fund them. That's pretty much it. It's pretty much the same concept. But I guess what I would prefer would be the community would have more say and more strength. For instance, I remember one time I had golf balls I used to live near a golf course, and golf balls sometimes would lop over the fence. And one time, actually 3 times, it hit my window. 3 times, and it broke them 3 times. I went up to them. I told them, you got to fix this. They didn't fix it at all. They wouldn't, because they didn't want to be responsible. So I called the police. They couldn't do anything because it's not a crime. I actually ended up winning. I went to talking to the city manager and the mayor of my community, and they said they couldn't do anything. Well, no, not of your
community. Your community doesn't have a city manager and a mayor. Your city does.
Well, a community can be a city. I mean, the way you're thinking,
but there is no a a city manager is a position that is a function of a charter. So that, I mean, you want to call it a community, you can call them communities, but I'm just trying to get a notion of like how structured these things are in your world, but continue.
All right. So pretty much I spoke to the mayor in the city and I told them my grievances, and they said they couldn't do anything about it. I would have to talk to a state representative or a state senator on this issue. I mean, I don't have that much time. I don't want to keep on going up the echelon just because someone broke my window. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like that, I think there should be more, I guess, authority on this matter in the city level than on the state level. I guess that's an example of why.
Did you find anybody on a state level who could handle the golf balls breaking your windows? No. I mean, yeah, I did, but I don't feel like I have to. I actually spoke to a representative, a state senator, about the issue, and he took my, he heard me out, and the mayor encouraged me to do petitions on the matter, and that was pretty much it. Like,
we need to back up a few hundred years here. All right.
Wait a second. This guy. I'm still not clear. Wait a second. I want to just stay in this moment for a second.
Forever.
So the issue is that this golf course was knocking balls into your house, breaking windows. Yeah. I don't want that. Yeah. Well, how about this? Why didn't you just take them to civil court?
Oh, actually, that's pretty much what happened. That's pretty much what happened. I ended up taking the small claims court, and I won my money. But the point was that, in a situation like that, when I talked to the city, they seem to have no power. I mean, I didn't bring it because
aren't you the one who said that you want these entities to have less power? This does not jibe with what you're talking about. Yeah. I got news for you. There's nobody on the federal level.
Misunderstanding what I'm saying.
There's nobody on the federal level who could have dealt with this. We have a civil set of laws. Incidentally, that small claims court. Yeah. Who funds that court? Where are the laws from that? Where are tort laws come from?
Sure. Okay.
Where? Tell everybody. Tell everybody.
Authority.
Sacramento. Sacramento. So you got your resolution from the existence of the state. And
I mean, it came from Sacramento, but why can't it be in Azusa or Glendora?
Because do you want to pay taxes for people to be developing these different sets of laws in each town? Is that what you want? You want to pay more taxes so that you can hire people to develop the exact same laws in each little county, constable, town, village, that type of thing?
The local courts would be owned by the people who own the golf course.
Okay. So you're thinking that if each city had their, I guess, judicial court, their sovereignty,
their laws, their own laws, they'd have to write all their own laws. They'd have to come up and debate and write all their own laws, and they'd be influenced. That golf course is probably one of the biggest taxpayers in the town. Hey, Jerry, I understand you're writing a law about golf balls hitting the windows. I have a suggestion for that. As the biggest taxpayer in our community, I think that should be perfectly legal for golf balls to hit windows. In fact, I think if somebody's if somebody's window gets in the way of my golf ball, I think probably they should pay me. What do you think about that, Jerry? Well, I got to tell you, Bob, I think that's a good idea. Well, I'm in charge of writing the laws in this town.
I guess, but then they would have to deal with the community that they harmed. And
bud.
No, definitely not me. I got a good amount of signatures that actually agreed with my cause.
Okay.
I mean, I had a lot of support. So it's not just me, bud.
Vote them out. They'll write new laws.
Pretty much.
You know what your taxes would be like?
Sure. I'm not saying, I don't know, maybe cheaper than federal taxes.
No. They have to do everything the federal and the state government's doing.
Like going to Iraq and Afghanistan?
No. You're the one who said you had no problem with the military. Don't talk to me about that.
Yeah.
You're the one.
No, I don't. But that doesn't mean I want them in Afghanistan or in Iraq.
I understand, but you're changing the topic. The point is you need a whole new set of laws and a lot fewer people who are paying for the same product.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I can see where you're coming from, but I actually have a question for you.
Yeah. Okay. And then
what's the living wage?
What's a living wage?
Yes. What is a living wage?
How would you calculate it? I think it's sort of arbitrary, frankly, but I think the way I would calculate it is that you need to be able to pay for 3 square meals a day. You need to be able to pay the median cost of housing. You need to be able to ensure that you can clothe, if you have children, yourselves or your children. That's okay. And that's how
Well, what's housing though? What's the median housing? What is it, like 5 rooms, 10 rooms, 1 room, 3 rooms?
Well,
Do I get a large screen TV?
Well, I think you could say, a bedroom for, you could say 100 square feet per person.
100 square feet per person. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, you could say 120. You could say 150. I mean,
150. Okay. Okay. So food and shelter, 3 square meals a day, and 150 square feet per person. Okay. And that's it. Nothing else. Not a dog or green lawn or a car. What about a car?
I think that if you could argue that there has to be an opportunity for transportation if you want people to be able to, get to work and whatnot, and healthcare.
So the living wage, that would require you to have some type of transportation, like a Toyota Corolla, or like a Mercedes Benz.
No, a Corolla is fine.
Or we could fund a public transit system.
Or I mean, I think you could come up with some type of formula where it's like, if you're if you're in a community that has a certain capacity for public transport relative, on a per capita basis, you could certainly work that out. I mean, people do. We have figures out there.
And I can do that all on $15 an hour.
I can't hear you.
And I can do that all on $15 an hour.
Well, I think in some areas it should be higher.
Okay, so in LA, in the inner city of LA, how much should minimum wage be?
I don't know, but I'm sure someone has done the calculation.
So you talk about a living wage, and you're criticizing me because you think that my ideas are half baked, but you always
hold on for 1 second. Let me use Google. All right, living wage in
oh my God,
in Los Angeles.
You're just figuring this out right now. That's rich.
What's your point?
Do you expect him to know every living wage based on cities in America?
Actually, you know what?
All the time.
With 0 children, it is considered $14.83. This is from MIT. That's a university.
And the inner city.
It says living wage calculation for Los Angeles County, California, Los Angeles County. Now, it may be higher for the actual city, but it's $14.83 an hour. This is according to MIT. They have a living wage calculator. The living wage is the hourly rate that an individual in a household must earn to support his or herself and their family. The assumption is the sole provider is working full-time, 2,080 hours per year. The tool provides information. The state minimum wage is the same for all individuals. For further reference, the technical documentation is here. I mean, there are social scientists who have calculated. If you want to argue with me as to like, hey, I don't think you need 1,800 calories a day. I think you need 1,600 calories a day. I mean, I suppose you could have that argument. But
I'm not trying to argue. I'm not trying to sprawl the argument further. I just want to focus on your establishment what a living wage means. Having 3 square meals a day and 150 square feet per person.
I mean,
what's your
I
point,
said it was arbitrary, but I'm just, there are people who work.
And you think $14.92 in California is good enough for that?
Los Angeles.
And I live in California.
Los Angeles County.
And it's kind of funny because didn't you get the reward for being a journalist?
No.
Are you an actual journalist?
What's your point? Are you
not a journalist,
for the minimum wage or against the minimum wage? Because libertarians would be against it because it's something imposed by the government.
Of course, I'm not for the minimum wage, but I'm not for people, But the situation is you're thinking that a living wage, such as like what you just popped up because somebody told you, some soothsayer told you that.
Well, I don't think he's a soothsayer. It's not a soothsayer. It is.
They might as well be because that average.
It is not a soothsayer. It is a 2020 update living wage calculator. It is from the Department of Urban Studies and Planning at MIT, which is a university. And
that's not an argument, but okay.
What's your point, dude? What's your point about the minimum wage?
Well, it is an argument. Excuse me. It is an argument that it's not done by a soothsayer. It's done by experts who study.
I'm saying it might as well be a soothsayer because those numbers are bullshit. I'm sorry. I live in California. I honestly know how much I make more than $15 an hour, and it's still hard to find a room like your own studio for $20 an hour.
It sounds like you think the minimum wage should be higher.
I am.
I'm not saying the minimum.
If you have data that suggests the minimum wage should be higher, I am totally on board with that.
I have experience knowing that is bullshit. I'm telling you, and I'm not advocating for minimum wage. I'm just telling you the fact.
Let's raise it. Okay, I accept it.
Understand the argument that you're trying to make here. But can I ask you a question? All right.
Go ahead.
It sounds like you work a job, right? You work for a wage.
Kinda. I flip cars.
Okay, so do you work for yourself then?
Now we know we have such a problem with lemon laws.
Lemon laws.
Yeah. No. I make sure that these cars are good. I don't. If there's something wrong with the engine or transmission, I wouldn't sell. I wouldn't sell my vehicles. I'm very transparent.
Is that a contract or is that just your work?
Contract?
Just my philosophical belief.
You don't sign a contract to that effect? Well, we don't have.
I mean, if they want to sign a contract, making sure that everything it doesn't go to plan, then I guess I'll honor it.
My point is,
maybe I'll be like,
have you ever worked for a wage? How much freedom do you have at work? Because libertarians are all about freedom, right?
The most freedom.
All right. Yeah.
Listen, here's the deal.
Think about that. That's all I'm going to say.
It's been one of the best days of my life. And I appreciate your calling in, Aaron, in a way that I can't really express to you in the words I have.
I'm sorry.
No. I'm not being facetious. I really did this.
Okay.
This was
it's like chicken soup for the cedar soul.
This is honestly, I needed this.
Do you think we can do this again?
I desperately hope so. And I don't think I've ever been more sincere about anything in my entire life. But Aaron, I appreciate you calling in, and we will post that link to the living wage. You can go to livingwage.mit.edu. And I suggest that you contact the people who developed that and tell them they've got to raise it.
More generous.
No, I'm not going to advocate for that.
Oh, okay. But I appreciate the phone call, and please call in again.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
We can continue this conversation because I have some things to say about the origins of private property that he might not like.
Yes.
Well, but also just distinguish between personal and private property.
Also that. There are so many things to say.
Like golf courses as an example of private property is like one of the most, like in any community, just a scar in the landscape of politics. So
I would point people to my conversation. I can't remember. Maybe it was the second one with Walter Block, and who is a professor at, I can't remember.
Was it Wayne State?
No. It's somewhere else, actually. It's somewhere you've heard of. That is, I can't remember.
George Mason?
No, you would think it was George Mason, but it's like a place you don't necessarily associate with it, but it's an endowed professorship, which made more sense. And also the guy who ran for president as a libertarian, I can't remember his name. He's a nice fellow.
Oh yeah, I forgot
the
that
kid
guy.
who got arrested at the memorial, the Lincoln Memorial. I can't.
Sandman.
No, gosh. Anyways, go back. Walter Block and I had a conversation about private property and how that's established, and this whole concept of you work, you develop property rights by working the property. And I said, well, the native people of this land were working the land. Why didn't they get to keep their property rights? Why didn't they have property rights? And ultimately, what it comes down to. And this is this guy is he's a professor at a business school. He was an advisor to Ron Paul and maybe to Rand Paul, I think, at one point. I think he's since become a Trumpster. But Walter Block's argument was that they adopted the perspective of, because they adopted a perspective of an idea that had developed in France, I believe in the maybe 14 or 15 or 1600s. I can't remember now. That's when it kicks in. That's when property rights kicks in. Prior to that.
How convenient.
Well, that's exactly the point, is that it's a completely arbitrary notion that just happens to maintain my property rights. But that's just, that's what we decided. So that's what it is. And that's the principle. Like, we're going to start the principle after I'm in the driver's seat. And that's basically it. So
at least this guy was honest about the fact that he has no principles, right? Like, his concept of rights is actually closer to mine, which is that these idealist concept of rights as these things that float out in the ether is nonsense. We have as many rights as we can take for ourselves.
Well, that's right. And I think, but the most libertarians, and this guy, Aaron, who called in, didn't really have that as much, say that they're going on first principles, but they just decide when first principles start. And it just happens to start at a place where it benefits them the most. All right, let's go through a couple IMs, then we got to get out of here. No, actually, one, Johnny Wrong. I think we all needed that hilarious dissection of bad political ideals today. Thanks, News Daddy. Folks, it was Loyola University. That's where he was from for Walter Block. Tomorrow, I think it may be, it's this one or the next one is going to be the last Michael retrospective for a while anyways. But tune in, and then I'll be back on Friday. Bye-bye.
It might take all the strength I got to get to
gotta
where
run.
I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar.